दायित्व परंपरा से चलता है, अनुभव से समृद्ध होता है और जनसेवा, राष्ट्र सेवा के भाव से संगठन को आगे बढ़ाता है। साथियों, अटल जी, आडवाणी जी और मुरली मनोहर जोशी जी के नेतृत्व में बीजेपी ने शून्य से लेकर शिखर तक का सफर देखा है। इस सदी में वेंकैया नायडू जी और नितिन गडकरी जी सहित हमारे कई वरिष्ठ साथियों ने संगठन को विस्तार दिया है। राजनाथ जी के नेतृत्व में पहली बार बीजेपी ने अपने दम पर पूर्ण बहुमत हासिल किया। फिर अमित भाई के नेतृत्व में देश के अनेक राज्यों में भाजपा की सरकारें बनी। लगातार दूसरी बार केंद्र में बीजेपी की सरकार बनी। फिर जेपी नड्डा जी के नेतृत्व में भाजपा पंचायत से लेकर पार्लियामेंट तक और सशक्त हुई। केंद्र में लगातार तीसरी बार भाजपा एनडीए की सरकार बनी। मैं पूर्व के सभी अध्यक्षों का उनके अमूल्य योगदान के लिए देश के कोटि कोटि कार्यकर्ताओं की तरफ से और मेरी तरफ से बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन करता हूं। साथियों, आप जानते हैं आज भाजपा का जितना फोकस संगठन के विस्तार पर है, उतनी ही बड़ी प्राथमिकता कार्यकर्ता के निर्माण की भी है। भाजपा एक ऐसी पार्टी है जहां लोगों को लगता होगा कि नरेंद्र मोदी देश के प्रधानमंत्री है, तीसरी बार प्रधानमंत्री बने, 50 साल की छोटी आयु में मुख्यमंत्री बन गए, 25 साल से लगातार हेड ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट रहे हैं। ये सब अपनी जगह पे हैं, लेकिन इन सबसे भी बड़ी चीज मेरे जीवन में है, मैं भारतीय जनता पार्टी का कार्यकर्ता हूं। ये सबसे बड़ा गर्व है। और जब बात पार्टी के विषयों को आती है, तब माननीय नितिन नबीन जी, मैं एक कार्यकर्ता हूं, वे मेरे बॉस हैं। अब माननीय नितिन नबीन जी हम सभी के अध्यक्ष हैं। और उनका दायित्व सिर्फ भाजपा को भी संभालना इतना नहीं है, एनडीए के सब साथियों के बीच भी उन्होंने तालमेल का बहुत बड़ा दायित्व भी देखना होता है। साथियों, माननीय नितिन जी के संपर्क में जो भी आया है, वो उनकी सरलता और सहजता की चर्चा जरूर करता है। बीजेपी युवा मोर्चा का दायित्व हो, अलग अलग राज्यों में प्रभारी के रूप में जिम्मेदारी हो या फिर बिहार सरकार में काम करने का अनुभव हो, नितिन जी ने हमेशा जब जब जो जहां जो जिम्मेवारी मिली अपने आप को उन्होंने साबित किया है। जिम्मेवारी देने वालों को भी उनके कार्य ने गर्व से भर दिया है। साथियों, ये 21वीं सदी है और देखते ही देखते 21वीं सदी के पहले 25 वर्ष तो पूरे भी हो चुके हैं। आने वाले 25 वर्ष बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। ये वो कालखंड है जब विकसित भारत का निर्माण होना है और होना तय है। इस महत्वपूर्ण कालखंड की शुरुआत में हमारे माननीय नितिन नबीन जी बीजेपी की विरासत को आगे बढ़ाएंगे। मैं आजकल के युवाओं की भाषा में कहूं तो नितिन जी खुद भी एक प्रकार से मिलेनियल है। वो उस जनरेशन से हैं जिसने भारत में बड़े आर्थिक, सामाजिक और टेक्नोलॉजिकल परिवर्तन होते देखे हैं। वो उस जनरेशन से हैं जिसने बचपन में रेडियो से सूचनाएं पाई और आज एआई के भी एक्टिव यूजर है। नितिन जी के पास युवा ऊर्जा भी है और संगठन में कार्य का लंबा अनुभव भी है। ये हमारे दल के हर कार्यकर्ता के लिए बहुत उपयोगी होगा। साथियों, इस वर्ष जनसंघ की स्थापना को 75 वर्ष हो रहे हैं और मैं आज इन 75 वर्ष लगातार लक्षावधि कार्यकर्ताओं ने, अनेक परिवारों ने, अनेक पीढ़ियों ने जो त्याग, तपस्या और बलिदान दिए हैं, मैं उनको आदरपूर्वक नमन करता हूं। जनसंघ रूपी वटवृक्ष से ही भाजपा का जन्म हुआ और भाजपा दुनिया के सबसे बड़ा राजनीतिक दल बन चुकी है। और ये सिर्फ भाजपा के कार्यकर्ताओं के लिए गौरव का विषय है, इतना नहीं है। देश के राजनीतिक समीक्षकों को, दुनिया को ये बात बतानी चाहिए कि भारत एक ऐसा देश है जिसकी रगों में इसकी मजबूती से लोकतंत्र चल रहा है, कि जहां दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी है। साथियों, बीजेपी एक संस्कार है। बीजेपी एक परिवार है। हमारे यहां मेंबरशिप से भी ज्यादा रिलेशनशिप होती है। बीजेपी एक ऐसी परंपरा है जो पद से नहीं प्रक्रिया से चलती है। हमारे यहां पदभार एक व्यवस्था है और कार्यभार ये जीवन भर की जिम्मेदारी है। हमारे यहां अध्यक्ष बदलते हैं, लेकिन आदर्श नहीं बदलते। नेतृत्व बदलता है, लेकिन दिशा नहीं बदलती। साथियों, भाजपा का स्वरूप नेशनल है। भाजपा का स्पिरिट नेशनल है, क्योंकि हमारा जुड़ाव लोकल है। हमारी जड़ें जमीन के नीचे गहरी है। इसलिए भाजपा रीजनल एस्पिरेशन को प्लेटफॉर्म देती है, उन्हें नेशनल एम्बिशंस का आधार बनाती है। और इसलिए आज देश के कोने कोने के लोग भाजपा के साथ हैं, भाजपा के साथ जुड़ रहे हैं। और इतना ही नहीं, जो भी अपनी राजनीति का प्रारंभ करना चाहता है, उसको भी भाजपा का प्रवेश द्वार सबसे उत्तम, सबसे सुरक्षित लगता है। साथियों, जनता जनार्दन की सेवा ये हमारे लिए हमेशा सर्वोपरि रही है। हमने सत्ता को सुख का नहीं, बल्कि सेवा का माध्यम बनाया है। इसलिए भाजपा पर जनता का विश्वास निरंतर मजबूत होता गया है। अगर बीते 11 वर्षों की ही बात करें तो भाजपा की यात्रा जन विश्वास अर्जित करने की अद्भुत यात्रा रही है। बीते 11 वर्षों में बीजेपी ने हरियाणा, असम, त्रिपुरा और ओडिशा में पहली बार अपने सामर्थ्य से सरकार बनाई। पश्चिम बंगाल और तेलंगाना में भाजपा जनता की एक बड़ी आवाज बनकर उभरी है। अक्सर होता यह है कि लंबे कार्यकाल के बाद सरकारों के लिए टिके रहना मुश्किल होता है, लेकिन बीजेपी ने इस ट्रेंड को भी तोड़ दिया है। गुजरात हो, मध्य प्रदेश हो, महाराष्ट्र हो, बिहार हो, इन सभी राज्यों में कई कार्यकाल के बावजूद बीजेपी पहले से भी बड़े जनादेश के साथ सरकार में लौटी है। साथियों, बीते 1.5-2 वर्षों में तो भाजपा पर जनता का भरोसा और मजबूत हुआ है। विधानसभा हो या स्थानीय निकाय, बीजेपी की स्ट्राइक रेट अभूतपूर्व रही है। इस दौरान देश में 6 राज्यों में विधानसभा चुनाव हुए हैं। इनमें से 4 चुनाव बीजेपी एनडीए ने जीते हैं। साथियों, आज भाजपा सिर्फ संसद और विधानसभा की नहीं, बल्कि नगर पालिकाओं और नगर निगमों में भी पहली पसंद है। और इसका ताजा उदाहरण अभी अभी हमारा महाराष्ट्र है। हाल में जो मेयर और पार्षदों के चुनाव परिणाम सामने आए, अभूतपूर्व है। बीजेपी महाराष्ट्र के स्थानीय निकायों में नंबर 1 पार्टी बनी है। कुल 29 में से 25 बड़े शहरों की जनता ने बीजेपी एनडीए को चुना है। कुल जितने पार्षद जीते हैं, उनमें से 50% बीजेपी के हैं। ऐसे ही केरला में भी आज बीजेपी के करीब 100 पार्षद हैं। केरला की राजधानी तिरुअनंतपुरम की जनता ने मेयर चुनाव में 45 साल बाद लेफ्ट से सत्ता छीनी और भाजपा पर भरोसा किया। मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि आने वाले विधानसभा चुनावों में भी लोग केरला में बीजेपी को अवसर जरूर देंगे। साथियों, बीजेपी निरंतर जीत रही है, उसका विस्तार हो रहा है। ये निश्चित तौर पर हम सभी के लिए गर्व का विषय है। लेकिन हम ये सभी के लिए बहुत बड़े दायित्व का बोध भी है और दायित्व बोध का समय भी है। कभी भाजपा ने पार्टी विद अ डिफरेंस के रूप में अपनी यात्रा शुरू की थी। आज बीजेपी पार्टी ऑफ गवर्नेंस भी है। देश ने के आजादी के बाद शासन के अलग अलग मॉडल देखे हैं। कांग्रेस के परिवारवाद का मॉडल, लेफ्ट का मॉडल, क्षेत्रीय दलों का मॉडल, अस्थिर सरकारों का दौर, ये सब मॉडल देख चुका है। लेकिन आज देश स्थिरता, सुशासन और संवेदनशीलता वाला भाजपा का विकास मॉडल देख रहा है। साथियों, ये भाजपा ही है जिसने सामाजिक न्याय के नारे को सच्चे स्वरूप में जमीन पर उतारा है। हमने गरीब कल्याण की योजनाओं को सरकारी फाइलों से निकालकर गरीब के घर तक पहुंचाया है। साथियों, मैं आपको कुछ उदाहरण देता हूं। आजादी के 70 वर्ष बाद सिर्फ 3 करोड़ ग्रामीण परिवारों तक ही पाइप से पानी पहुंच पाया था। माताओं बहनों की पीड़ा, पानी के लिए उनके संघर्ष की सूध लेने वाला कोई नहीं था। और मुझे याद है, मैं जब गुजरात में राजनीतिक क्षेत्र में नहीं आया था, सामाजिक जीवन में काम करता था, तो हमारे यहाँ एक धंधुका करके स्थान है, वहां मैं जाता था तो वो मुझे वहां के लोग कहते थे कि आप यहां रात को मत रुकिए और जब भी आपका दौरा हो तो सुबह 10 बजे के बाद आइए। नॉर्मली मेरा नेचर रहता था कि हर नए स्थान पर जाके रात को रुकूं, कार्यकर्ताओं से मिलूं, लेकिन धंधुका वाले मना करते थे। क्यों? वो कहते पानी नहीं है, सुबह हम आपको स्नान करने के लिए पानी नहीं दे पाएंगे। वहां तो कहावत चलती थी कि बेटी को बंदूकें दो लेकिन धंधुके मत दो, यानी उसको बंदूक लगा मार दो लेकिन धंधुके में शादी मत करो। पानी नहीं था। ये दर्द मैंने देखा है। मैं धरती की सच्चाई से जुड़ा था। माताओं बहनों की पीड़ा अपनी आंखों के सामने देखी थी, और तब हम जल जीवन मिशन लेकर आए, और सिर्फ 5-6 साल में 12 करोड़ से ज्यादा परिवारों को नल से जल की सुविधा से जोड़ा। साथियों, ये हमारी सरकार है जिसने धुएं से बीमार होती बहनों की पीड़ा समझी, वरना पहले तो एलपीजी गैस को भी अमीरों का ही सौभाग्य मान लिया गया था। भाजपा ने पूरी संवेदनशीलता के साथ हर घर को एलपीजी गैस कनेक्शन से जोड़ने का अभियान चलाया। वर्ष 2014 तक जहां सिर्फ 14 करोड़ एलपीजी कनेक्शन थे, आज देश में 33 करोड़ से अधिक गैस कनेक्शन है। ऐसे ही गांव की बहनों को लखपति दीदी बनाने का अभियान है। ये भी इसलिए संभव हो पाया क्योंकि भाजपा बहनों बेटियों के सपनों के प्रति संवेदनशील है। साथियों, एक जमाना था हम भी सुनते थे कि फलाना परिवार वो तो लखपति परिवार है, ढीकना परिवार लखपति परिवार है, यानी लखपति होना बहुत बड़ी बात मानी जाती थी। ये मोदी है जो सपने देखता है कि मेरे गांव की गरीब मां भी लखपति दीदी बनेगी। साथियों, दशकों तक आदिवासी समाज को सिर्फ वोट बैंक से जोड़कर देखा गया, लेकिन संवेदनशील भाजपा ने, भाजपा के हमारे संस्कारों ने समाज के प्रति समान भाव की हमारी परंपरा के कारण भाजपा ने आदिवासियों में भी सबसे पिछड़ी जनजातियों की पीड़ा को समझा, उनके विकास के लिए पीएम जनमन योजना बनाई, और पीएम जनमन योजना के लाभार्थी इतने बिखरे हुए हैं और एक दो दूर दूर जंगलों में पड़े हैं। उनसे एक म्युनिसिपैलिटी की सीट भी जीती नहीं जा सकती है। वोट के हिसाब से कोई उनकी तरफ देखेगा नहीं, लेकिन जब वोट से ऊपर उठ करके संवेदनाएं होती हैं, समाज का कल्याण हमारे संस्कार होते हैं, तो पीएम जनमन योजना जन्म लेती है। आदिवासियों में भी अति पिछड़ा संख्या में भले ही कम है, लेकिन उनके प्रति हमारी संवेदना में कोई कमी नहीं है। साथियों, हमारा नॉर्थ ईस्ट, वहां वोटर उतने नहीं है, सीट भी उतनी नहीं है, इसलिए कांग्रेस की सरकारों में उन्हें बरसों तक उपेक्षित रखा गया। लेकिन संवेदनशील भाजपा ने नॉर्थ ईस्ट को दिल से भी जोड़ा और दिल्ली से भी जोड़ा। एक और उदाहरण आकांक्षी जिलों का है। हमारे देश में 100 से अधिक जिले ऐसे थे जिनको कांग्रेस सरकारें पिछड़ा घोषित करके भूल गई थी। इन जिलों को पनिशमेंट पोस्टिंग के लिए इस्तेमाल किया जाता था, यानी जिन अधिकारियों को सजा देनी होती थी तो उन्हें वहां भेजा जाता था। हमारी भाजपा सरकार ने इन जिलों को आकांक्षी जिले घोषित किया और प्राथमिकता के आधार पर इनके विकास के लिए काम किया। आज ये आकांक्षी जिले विकास के कई पैरामीटर्स पर अन्य जिलों से बेहतर प्रदर्शन कर रहे हैं। राज्य की एवरेज की बराबरी आकर के खड़े हो गए। साथियों, भाजपा का मंत्र है पिछड़ों को प्राथमिकता, पिछड़ों को प्राथमिकता। जिनकी किसी ने सूद नहीं ली, हमने उनकी साधना की है। जिनको किसी ने पूछा नहीं, मोदी ने उन्हें पूजा है। हमारी कार्य संस्कृति सर्वसमावेशी है, सर्वांगीण है, सर्वस्पर्शी है, सर्वहितकारी है, सर्व कल्याणकारी है। और ये कार्य संस्कृति गरीब को समान अवसर देने वाली है, गरीब को सशक्त करने वाली है। इसी वजह से सिर्फ एक दशक में 25 करोड़ लोगों ने गरीबी को पराजित किया है। और ये 25 करोड़ लोग कौन हैं? इनमें सबसे अधिक दलित, पिछड़े और आदिवासी परिवार है। साथियों, बीते वर्षों में जन विश्वास की जो पूंजी हमने अर्जित की है, उस भरोसे को कायम रखना बहुत बड़ी जरूरत है। देश की जनता 2047 तक विकसित भारत बनाने के लिए संकल्पित है। इसलिए बीते 11 वर्षों में रिफॉर्म्स की जो यात्रा हमने शुरू की है, वो अब रिफॉर्म एक्सप्रेस बन चुकी है। हमें राज्यों के स्तर पर, शहर की इकाइयों के स्तर पर, जहां भी भाजपा एनडीए सरकारें हैं, वहां रिफॉर्म्स की गति तेज करनी है। भाजपा सिटी गवर्नेंस का भी एक नया मॉडल देश के सामने प्रस्तुत कर रही है। इस लक्ष्य के साथ हम आगे बढ़ना चाहते हैं। साथियों, जब हम सत्ता में नहीं भी थे, तब भी हम अपने मूल आदर्शों से कभी नहीं भटके। हम राष्ट्र संकटों को झेलते रहे, जज्बात बढ़ाते रहे और जीतते भी रहे। हम वो लोग हैं, हमारा वो चरित्र है, हमारे वो संस्कार है। खुद से बड़ा दल और दल से बड़ा देश, ये भाजपा के हर कार्यकर्ता का संस्कार है, भाजपा के हर कार्यकर्ता का जीवन मंत्र है। इसी भाव के साथ बीते 11 वर्षों में हमने अनेक चुनौतियों पर विजय पाई है। जम्मू कश्मीर से आर्टिकल 370 की दीवार गिराना हो, 3 तलाक के खिलाफ कानून बनाना हो, इनको कभी असंभव माना जाता था। आज ये हकीकत बन चुके हैं। आज देश में माओवादी आतंक भी अपनी अंतिम सांसें गिन रहा है। साथियों, आगे भी हमें हर चुनौती का पूरे सामर्थ्य से सामना करना है। आज देश के सामने एक बहुत बड़ी चुनौती घुसपैठियों की है, आबादी के असंतुलन की है। दुनिया के धनवान देश, समर्थ देश, वे भी अपने देश में जो घुसपैठिए हैं उनकी जांच पड़ताल कर रहे हैं और उनको पकड़ पकड़ करके निकाल रहे हैं। और दुनिया उनको पूछती नहीं है कि तुम घुसपैठियों को क्यों निकाल रहे हो। तुम तो लोकतंत्र का झंडा लेकर के घूम रहे थे, तुम तो पूरे दुनिया के नवाब बन के बैठे थे, क्यों निकाल रहे हो। दुनिया में कोई अपने देश में घुसपैठियों को स्वीकार नहीं करता। भारत भी घुसपैठियों को अपने गरीबों, हमारे नौजवानों के हक कभी भी लूटने नहीं दे सकता। घुसपैठिए देश की सुरक्षा के लिए बहुत बड़ा खतरा है। उनकी पहचान करके उन्हें वापस उनके देश भेजना बहुत आवश्यक है। इसके अलावा ऐसे राजनीतिक दल जो वोट बैंक की राजनीति में घुसपैठियों को बचा रहे हैं या उन्हें कवर दे रहे हैं, उन्हें हमें पूरी शक्ति से जनता के सामने बेनकाब करना ही होगा, उनको एक्सपोज करना ही होगा। साथियों, एक और बड़ी चुनौती अर्बन नक्सल की भी है। अर्बन नक्सल का दायरा इंटरनेशनल हो रहा है और यहां अर्बन नक्सल की बड़ी चतुराई होती है। ये यहां मीडिया वाले इतने बैठे हैं ना, अगर साल में एकाध बार भी अगर मोदी की किसी अच्छी चीज को उन्होंने ट्वीट कर दिया या टीवी पे बोल दिया या अखबार में लिख दिया तो उस पत्रकारी तो ऐसी फजेत कर देते, उसके पीछे ऐसे पड़ जाते हैं, उसको अछूत बना देते हैं, भविष्य में वो कभी बोल ना सके ऐसा कर देते हैं। ये अर्बन नक्सल की स्टाइल है। हमको भी सालों तक ऐसा अछूत बना के रख दिया पूरे देश में भाजपा को। अब देश समझ गया है अर्बन नक्सलों के कारनामे। भारत को नुकसान पहुंचाने के लिए अर्बन नक्सली लगातार कोशिशें कर रहे हैं, साजिशें कर रहे हैं। अर्बन नक्सलियों के इस गठजोड़ को हमें संगठन की ताकत से, वैचारिक ताकत से और हमारे परिणामकारी इतिहास को बुलंदी दे करके उनको परास्त करना है, उनको तोड़ना है। साथियों, देश के लिए परिवारवाद बहुत बड़ा अभिशाप है। और जब मैं परिवारवाद की बात करता हूं तो अक्सर मैदान में आ जाते हैं। वो मुझे कहते हैं फलाने के बेटा, डिगना के बेटा, वो बात को डाइवर्ट करते हैं। किसी के बेटे की प्रतिभा का हम विरोधी नहीं है, किसी की बेटी की प्रतिभा का हम विरोधी नहीं है, लेकिन दुर्भाग्य से कांग्रेस और देश के अनेक क्षेत्रीय राजनीतिक दलों पर आज अलग अलग परिवारों का कब्जा हो गया है। पार्टी का जन्म किसी परिवार ने किया, पार्टी में लगातार एक के बाद एक उनके परिवार के ही अध्यक्ष होते हैं। पार्टी की पूरी निर्णय प्रक्रिया उस परिवार के हाथ में होती है। पार्टी का कोई भी कार्यकर्ता हो, उसको विचार से लेना देना नहीं, उनको उस परिवार से समर्पित रहना पड़ता है। ये परिवारवाद खतरनाक है, ये लोकतंत्र का दुश्मन है। और इस परिवारवादी राजनीति ने देश के नौजवानों के लिए दरवाजे बंद कर दिए, उनके आगे आने के सारे मौके खत्म कर दिए हैं। और इसलिए देश के इन युवाओं को अवसर मिलने ही चाहिए जो राजनीति के माध्यम से नए समाधान देने के लिए आगे आना चाहते हैं। और इसलिए मैंने कहा है, मैं 1 लाख ऐसे नौजवानों को राजनीति में लाना चाहता हूं जिनके परिवार में पहली बार वो राजनीति में आएंगे। साथियों, अपने इन प्रयासों के बीच हमें हर उस बुराई से दूर रहना है। और ये बात मैं जरा गंभीरता से बताना चाहता हूं। जनता हमें आशीर्वाद दे रही है, निरंतर आशीर्वाद दे रही है। हम जो कुछ भी है, जनता जनार्दन के आशीर्वाद के कारण, जो कुछ भी है, मेहनत कश समर्पित कार्यकर्ताओं के परिश्रम के कारण है। और इसलिए जब इतने बढ़ रहे हैं, इतना सम्मान मिल रहा है, इतनी स्वीकृति मिल रही है, तब हमारा दायित्व अनेक गुना बढ़ जाता है। और पल पल हमें सोचना चाहिए, वो कौन से कारण हैं जिन्होंने कांग्रेस पार्टी को बर्बाद कर दिया। वो कौन सी बुराइयां कांग्रेस में घुस गई जो आज कांग्रेस को तबाही के कगार पर लाकर के खड़ा कर दिया। हमें उन सारी बुराइयों से बचना है। ये बुराइयां किसी भी सूरत में हमारे भीतर नहीं आनी चाहिए। हमें इससे बच के रहना है। और जहां जहां हम बच के रहते हैं, हमें कोई मुकाबला नहीं कर पाता है। साथियों, आज देश को याद भी नहीं होगा कि 1984 में, 1984 में कांग्रेस को 400 से अधिक सीटें मिली थी, नेहरू जी के जमाने से भी ज्यादा। और देश ने करीब करीब 50% वोट दिया था कांग्रेस को। लेकिन आज कांग्रेस 100 सीटों के लिए तरस गई है। कांग्रेस अपने इस घनघोर पतन की कभी समीक्षा नहीं करती, क्योंकि अगर समीक्षा करेंगे, ये पतन के कारणों की ओर जाएंगे तो फिर उसी परिवार पर सवाल उठेंगे। जिस परिवार ने कांग्रेस पर कब्जा करके रखा है और इसलिए बहाने ढूंढते रहते हैं, पतन की तरफ सही कारण ढूंढने की हिम्मत तक खो चुके हैं वो लोग। साथियों, दूसरी तरफ भाजपा है। हम हार और जीत के बाद समीक्षा करते हैं। मैं आपको फिर महाराष्ट्र चुनाव का नतीजों का उदाहरण दूंगा। महाराष्ट्र में हम निकाय चुनाव जीतने के बाद जश्न में डूबे नहीं, बल्कि मैं तो अभी पढ़ रहा था कि उसी दिन से हमारे महाराष्ट्र के कार्यकर्ता आने वाले पंचायत के चुनावों की तैयारियों के लिए बैठक शुरू कर दी थी। मुझे याद है 2002 में हमने भव्य विजय प्राप्त किया गुजरात में। चारों तरफ आनंद उत्सव का माहौल था। देश भरिया का मीडिया भी वहां मौजूद था। अर्बन नक्सल तो बड़ी संख्या में आए थे। वो बेचारे मेरे पराजय का जश्न मनाना चाहते थे, तो वो ढूंढ रहे थे सारी चीजें। और मैं एक मीटिंग में बैठा था, तो उनको बड़ा आश्चर्य हुआ कि इतना जलसा चल रहा है और ये कैसा मुख्यमंत्री है जो आज चुनाव नतीजे आए हैं और बैठा है। और मैं क्या कर रहा था, मैं कार्यालय में मीटिंग ले रहा था और मैंने पूछा, अच्छा बताओ भाई इतनी हार क्यों गए। ये भाजपा है जो जीत का जश्न मनाते समय भी अपनी कमियों की लगातार समीक्षा करता है और कमियों से उभरने के लिए हर समय का उपयोग करता है। लोकतंत्र में इसी स्वस्थ परंपरा को, इसी डेडिकेशन को हम सब कार्यकर्ताओं की जिम्मेवारी है, हमें आगे बढ़ाना है। हमें ध्यान रखना है कि जो कांग्रेस की बुराइयों से बचेगा वही देश में आगे बढ़ेगा। साथियों, आज भाजपा परिवार को अपना नया मुखिया मिला है। कांग्रेस की बुराइयों से बचेगा वही देश में आगे बढ़ेगा। साथियों, आज भाजपा परिवार को अपना नया मुखिया मिला है, ऊर्जावान मुखिया मिला है, अनुभवी मुखिया मिला है और भाजपा परिवार की हमारी ताकत हर कार्यकर्ता का परिश्रम है, उसकी सामूहिक चेतना है। बूथ पर जो हमारा कार्यकर्ता पूरे साल भर जुटा रहता है, वो ही हमारी सच्ची ताकत है। हमें याद रखना है, हम सबसे जुड़े, हम सबको जोड़े, कल्याणकारी योजनाओं से हर लाभार्थी को लाभ पहुंचाए, ये हमारा ध्येय होना चाहिए। इसी आग्रह के साथ माननीय नितिन नबीन जी को बीजेपी के कोटि कोटि कार्यकर्ताओं की तरफ से पुनः बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। और साथियों, आज का पल हम सबके लिए बहुत विशेष पल है। हमारे राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष जी अब हमारा मार्गदर्शन करने वाले हैं। उनका एक एक शब्द हमारे लिए आगे की दिशा होगी। हमारे आगे के कार्य रचना के लिए उनका मार्गदर्शन हमारी अमूल्य पूंजी होगी। मैं भी एक कार्यकर्ता के तौर पर मैं पहले नए अध्यक्ष जी को मेरे काम का हिसाब दे रहा था। मैंने हिसाब दिया, अब वो मेरा सीआर लिखेंगे। लेकिन अब मेरे आगे के काम के लिए मैं उनके मार्गदर्शन की प्रतीक्षा कर रहा हूं। मैं उनको सुनने के लिए बहुत ही उत्सुक हूं, आतुर हूं। फिर एक बार बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी। हमारे नवनिर्वाचित राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष जी का राजनीतिक सफर तब शुरू हुआ जब वो बिरला इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी के तीसरे वर्ष में पढ़ाई कर रहे थे और कुछ परिस्थिति जन्य कारणों से पढ़ाई छोड़नी पड़ी और इंजीनियर बनने वाले नितिन जी को राजनीतिक सफर शुरू करनी पड़ी। ऐसे संगठन कुशल, राजनीतिक कुशाग्रता और एक सफल प्रशासक रहे, सरल स्वभाव के संवेदनशील युवा नेतृत्व, जैसे आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कहा कि पूरा देश उनको सुनना चाहता है। मैं नवनिर्वाचित अध्यक्ष आदरणीय नितिन नवीन जी को संबोधित करने के लिए आमंत्रित करता हूं। हम सबको वो मार्गदर्शन करें।
भारत माता की, भारत माता की। भारतीय जनता पार्टी जिंदाबाद, भारतीय जनता पार्टी जिंदाबाद। आज इस अवसर पर हमारे भारतीय जनता पार्टी के वैसे नेतृत्वकर्ता जिन्होंने देश को ही नहीं पूरे विश्व को नेतृत्व दिया, और मैं कह सकता हूं एक प्रधान सेवक के रूप में जिस प्रकार से उन्होंने सेवा की है वो हमारे कालखंड के सभी कार्यकर्ताओं के लिए प्रेरणादायी हैं। ऐसे अपने यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री, विश्व के लोकप्रिय नेता श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी का मैं सबसे प्रथम अभिवादन करता हूं कि 140 करोड़ जनता आपके इस सेवा भाव से हमेशा आपका अभिनंदन करना चाहती है। हमारे बीच में भारतीय जनता पार्टी के पूर्व के राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष, वर्तमान में भारत सरकार के रक्षा मंत्री आदरणीय श्री राजनाथ सिंह जी, भारतीय जनता पार्टी के पूर्व के अध्यक्ष और हमारे गृह मंत्री आदरणीय श्री अमित शाह जी, और मैं जिस शख्सियत को सबसे पहले आज के इस अवसर पर जरूर प्रणाम करना चाहता हूं और नमन करता हूं, अभिनंदन करता हूं अपने निवर्तमान अध्यक्ष और भारत सरकार के केंद्रीय स्वास्थ्य मंत्री आदरणीय जेपी नड्डा जी को, हमारे पूर्व राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष और देश में सड़क परिवहन और राज्य मार्ग मंत्री के रूप में अपना अलग छवि बनाने वाले आदरणीय नितिन गडकरी जी, भारतीय जनता पार्टी के सभी संसदीय बोर्ड के सदस्यगण, राष्ट्रीय संगठन महामंत्री बीएल संतोष जी, और जिन्होंने इस पूरी चुनाव प्रक्रिया को और हम कह सकते इस संगठन पर्व को नेतृत्व दिया, वैसे अपने के लक्ष्मण जी, सभी राज्यों के माननीय मुख्यमंत्रीगण, हमारे सभी केंद्रीय मंत्रीगण, माननीय उप मुख्यमंत्रीगण, भारतीय जनता पार्टी के सभी राष्ट्रीय पदाधिकारीगण, सभी प्रदेशों से आए हुए हमारे माननीय प्रदेश अध्यक्षगण, माननीय संगठन महामंत्रीगण और हमारे सभी इस राष्ट्रीय परिषद के जो हमारे नुमाइंदे प्रतिनिधि यहाँ उपस्थित हुए हैं, मैं उन सभी को का अभिनंदन करता हूँ और साथ ही साथ देश भर के सभी कार्यकर्ताओं को और यहाँ पर उपस्थित सभी कार्यकर्ता भाइयों को भी बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन और धन्यवाद करता हूँ। आज मैं सर्वप्रथम हृदय की गहराइयों से आप सबका आभार व्यक्त करता हूं जो हमारे मंच पर शीर्ष पर बैठे हैं, हमारा शीर्ष नेतृत्व और यहाँ पर बैठा हुआ पार्टी का वैसा नेतृत्व जिसने हर बूथ तक भाजपा के विस्तार में योगदान दिया है। आपने मुझ जैसे सामान्य कार्यकर्ता को पार्टी का इस सर्वोच्च पद तक पहुंचाने का अवसर दिया है। मैं इसके लिए आप सभी को प्रणाम करता हूं। माननीय आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी, मैं हृदय से आपका आभार व्यक्त इसलिए करता हूं क्योंकि हम लोग ने हमेशा दूर से ही एक कार्यकर्ता के रूप में किस प्रकार से आप देश सेवा का काम लगातार कर रहे हैं। हमने हमेशा देखा कि जब पहली बार मैं गुजरात के आनंद में आपके साथ एक कार्यक्रम में शिरकत किया था, मुझे याद है मैं उस समय राष्ट्रीय महामंत्री था और मैंने कहा जब आपको उस समय सद्भावना मिशन के कार्यक्रम में एक एक व्यक्ति को सुनते देखा और जब कार्यक्रम की समाप्ति के बाद आपने अपना ग्रीन रूम में हम लोग से जब बातचीत किया तो किस भाव से वो इतने बड़ी संख्या में गुजरात के लोग आते क्यों हैं, आपने हम वहाँ पर बैठे हुए लोगों को समझाया कि ये व्यक्ति, ये जो इतने लोग आते हैं, ये केवल हमसे गुजरात की जो भावना जुड़ी है, जो विकास की भावना गुजरात को हमने अपने साथ जोड़ा है, इसके कारण इतने लोग आते हैं। मैंने उस दिन समझा कि एक व्यक्ति बड़ा तब बनता है जब लोगों की भावनाओं से अपने आप को जोड़ता है। मैं इसके लिए आज आपका इसलिए भी अभिनंदन करता हूं क्योंकि आपके कार्यकाल में मैंने देखा कि जो भाजपा की सोच रही है सर्वव्यापी और सर्वस्पर्शी, आपने उस सोच के साथ काम किया। आपने जो मूल मंत्र दिया, सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास, सबका प्रयास, आज देश का हर पूरा जनमानस उसके साथ अपने आप को जोड़कर देख रहा है। मैं आज इस अवसर पर पुनः पूरे आदर और सम्मान के साथ अपने निवर्तमान अध्यक्ष जेपी नड्डा जी का अभिनंदन करता हूं, इसलिए कि पिछले कार्यकाल में मैंने देखा कि किस प्रकार से संगठन को आपने अभूतपूर्व रूप से विस्तार खुद करते हुए किया। साथ ही साथ कार्यकर्ता आधारित कैसे राजनीति हो, इसको आपने बढ़ाया। और अभी बहुत बड़ी बात हम लोगों सब लोगों ने देखा, जिस कोरोना कालखंड में एक एक व्यक्ति अपने घर के अंदर महफूज हो रहा था, उस समय सेवा के उस परंपरा को, सेवा की संस्कृति को आपने जिस प्रकार से समाज में भाजपा कार्यकर्ताओं से आह्वान किया कि आप जाइए, आगे बढ़िए और सेवा के भाव से इस देश में कोरोना कालखंड में लोगों की सेवा कीजिए। पूरा संगठन आपके साथ खड़ा रहा। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का जो निर्देश था उसको आपने जिस तरीके से लागू किया वो हम सब कार्यकर्ताओं के लिए अनुकरणीय हुआ। और मैं इसलिए उस समय को याद करता हूं कि जब विपक्ष के लोग घर में दुबके थे और भाजपा कार्यकर्ता हर काल कोरोना के पीड़ितों की सेवा में लगा था, वो कहीं ना कहीं माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का यशस्वी नेतृत्व था, आपका मार्गदर्शन था, तभी हम उस कालखंड से, उस आपदा से निकलकर बाहर आ पाए। मैं आज इस अवसर पर पार्टी के अपने पूर्व के सभी राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष को स्मरण भी करता हूं और हमारे कई राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष जो यहाँ पर बैठे हैं, मैं उनका भी अभिवादन करता हूं। मैं देखा हूं 2006 में मैं पहली बार जब विधायक बना, उस कालखंड से लेकर किस प्रकार माननीय हमारे पूर्व के राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष राजनाथ सिंह जी ने पार्टी के कामों को हमेशा हर कार्यकर्ता से जुड़ने का प्रयास किया। मैंने जब नितिन गडकरी जी को देखा तो मैंने देखा कि किस प्रकार से संगठन के हर मोर्चा और सेल को उन्होंने गढ़ने का काम किया। और मैंने जब गृह मंत्री जी को राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष के रूप में देखा तो बूथ तक के कार्यकर्ताओं की चिंता करते हुए मैंने उनको देखा। मैंने उनको इस रूप में देखा कि किस प्रकार से आज पार्टी का जिस स्थान पे हम लोग आज खड़े हैं, कार्यालय कार्यकर्ता के लिए मैं कह सकता हूं तीर्थ स्थान होता है, और जहां से कार्यकर्ता अपनी ताकत पाता है, उस कार्यालय को भी आपने किस प्रकार से पूरे देश में एक निर्माण करने की योजना बनाई। और आज हर बूथ का कार्यकर्ता अपने आप को उस तीर्थ पर जाकर अपने आप को धन्य महसूस करता है। मैं आज अपने पूर्व के सभी राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्षों को इस अवसर पे बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन करता हूं और साथ ही साथ उन सब को स्मरण करते हुए उनका आभार व्यक्त करता हूं कि उन्होंने पार्टी को इस मुकाम तक पहुंचाने में बहुत बड़ा योगदान दिया है। मैं आज नमन करता हूं उन लाखों कार्यकर्ताओं को जिन्होंने पार्टी का संगठन, राष्ट्रवाद के विचार और भारत माता की मान बढ़ाने के लिए अपना जीवन न्यौछावर किया। आज उनकी तपस्या और त्याग ही है का परिणाम है कि आज पार्टी इस ऊंचाई तक पहुंच पाई है। मैं उस भूमि से आता हूं जहां महात्मा बुद्ध, महावीर, चाणक्य, सम्राट अशोक, आर्यभट्ट, गुरु गोविंद सिंह, जेपी, राजेंद्र बाबू और जननायक कर्पूरी ठाकुर की वो भूमि को भी मैं नमन करता हूं, उस पाटलिपुत्रा की भूमि को भी नमन करता हूं। साथ ही साथ इस अवसर पे मैं अपने माता और पिता को भी निश्चित रूप से स्मरण करते हुए उनको नमन करता हूं, क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं आज मेरे व्यक्तित्व में किसी एक शख्सियत का मैं मानता हूं तो निश्चित रूप से मेरे माता पिता का संस्कार, पार्टी का विचार और कहीं ना कहीं मेरे बड़ों का मार्गदर्शन मुझे यहाँ तक पहुँचाया है और मेरे कार्यकर्ताओं का स्नेह मुझे यहाँ पर पहुँचाया है। आज के दिन मैं अपने क्षेत्र की जनता को भी प्रणाम करता हूँ, जिसने मुझे एक विधायक के रूप में चुना जरूर, पर संगठन ने मुझे जिस प्रकार से गढ़ने का काम किया, आज मैं इसी कारण से उस जनता के आशीर्वाद और पार्टी के मार्गदर्शन के कारण यहाँ तक पहुँच पाया हूँ। आज का क्षण मेरे लिए संकल्प का क्षण है। आज सिर्फ एक पद को धारण नहीं कर रहा हूँ, मैं पार्टी के इस विचार को, परंपराओं को, एक राष्ट्रवादी आंदोलन की जिम्मेदारी को स्वीकार कर रहा हूँ। और मैं इस अवसर पर साथ अपने सभी वरिष्ठ कार्यकर्ताओं को भी प्रणाम करता हूँ। साथियों, हम लोगों ने देखा है श्यामा प्रसाद मुखर्जी जी का प्रखर राष्ट्रवाद किस प्रकार से हमारे हर कार्यकर्ताओं के मन में बसा हुआ है। पंडित दीनदयाल जी के उपाध्याय के अंत्योदय और माननीय स्वर्गीय अपने सधे भारत रत्न अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी का सुशासन की राजनीति, आज माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी उसको आत्मसात करते हुए विकसित भारत की परिकल्पना हम सबके सामने रखी है। और आज 140 करोड़ भारतवासी अपने आप को इस विकसित भारत के सपने के साथ जोड़कर देश को आगे बढ़ाने में लगा है। मैं इसके लिए तहे दिल से माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का आभार व्यक्त करता हूँ। अभी माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी अपने संबोधन में बता रहे थे किस प्रकार से अंत्योदय की योजनाओं को उन्होंने नीचे उतारा है। जल जीवन मिशन ही नहीं, हम महिलाओं को 11 करोड़ शौचालय की योजना को भी याद करना चाहेंगे। किस प्रकार से महिलाओं का सम्मान बढ़ा, 4 करोड़ लोगों को पक्के मकान मिले, 42 करोड़ लोगों को आयुष्मान भारत, 56 करोड़ लोगों के जनधन खाते खुले। मुझे आज भी याद है जब जनधन खाता खोलाने की बात हो रही थी तो कई लोग देश में, जब हम भाजपा के लोग इसको आगे बढ़ा रहे थे तो लोग हमारा मजाक उड़ा रहे थे। पर मैं आज भी मानता हूं गरीब के खाते में अगर 1 रुपया दिल्ली से चलता है तो 1 रुपया अगर गरीब के खाते में पहुंच पाता है तो ये कहीं ना कहीं उस जनधन खाते का वरदान के रूप में मैं देखता हूं। मैं आज के दिन माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के इस सबके साथ और सबके विकास के इस नारे को फलीभूत होता देख रहा हूं। हम लोगों ने लंबे समय से कुछ नारे को, भाजपा के कार्यकर्ता, हमारे जनसंकाल के कार्यकर्ता लगातार कुछ नारे को गढ़ते थे। रामलल्ला हम आएंगे, मंदिर वहीं बनाएंगे, जहां हुए बलिदान मुखर्जी वो कश्मीर हमारा है, एक देश में 2 विधान, 2 प्रधान, 2 निशान नहीं चलेगा। साथियों, आज भाजपा के कार्यकर्ताओं ने वो कालखंड देखा जब अयोध्या का भव्य राम मंदिर का मार्ग प्रशस्त हुआ। आज जम्मू कश्मीर की जनता ने 370 धारा से मुक्ति का दौर देखा। आज सांस्कृतिक व राष्ट्रवाद की विचारें और मजबूत हो रही हैं। साथियों, मुझे याद है अब वो समय जब हम लोग आज श्रीनगर के लाल चौक पर तिरंगा लहराते देखते हैं तो गर्व की अनुभूति होती है। हमने वो दौर भी देखा था जब पाकिस्तान के झंडे लहरा रहे थे और दिल्ली की सरकार बैठकर मौन बैठी थी उस समय, क्योंकि वो समय हम लोगों ने युवा मोर्चा के कालखंड में काम करने का जब मौका मिला था तो हमने देखा था उस समय जब माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी उस कालखंड से 370 को समाप्ति किए तो कहीं ना कहीं पूरे कश्मीर की फिजा बदली है और आज कश्मीर का लाल चौक तिरंगे से लहराया नहाया नजर आता है। ये परिवर्तन हमारे देश में आया है। साथियों, हम भारतीय जनता पार्टी के उस समान राजनीतिक दल नहीं जिसके लिए हम काम करते हैं, हम उस विचार के साथ काम करते हैं जिस विचार से हम राजनीतिक अभिव्यक्ति के साथ साथ उस नारे के साथ काम करते हैं जहां राष्ट्र प्रथम के नारे नेशन फर्स्ट, पार्टी नेक्स्ट और सेल्फ लास्ट। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने इस नारे के साथ हम लोगों को जोड़ा है, हमारे नेतृत्वकर्ता ने हमें जोड़ा है, और हम सब के लिए ये प्राथमिकता होनी चाहिए कि हम राष्ट्र के आगे रखकर ही अपने कामों को आगे बढ़ाएं। साथियों, हम अपने नेतृत्वकर्ता के संघर्ष और बलिदान से सीखने की आवश्यकता है। ये हम वैसे राजनीतिक दल के लोग हैं जहां राजनीतिक सत्ता नहीं साधना है, राजनीतिक भोग नहीं त्याग है, राजनीतिक ऐशो आराम नहीं तपस्या है, राजनीतिक कोई पदभार नहीं उत्तरदायित्व है। तो आइए हम सब कार्यकर्ता इस संकल्प के साथ अपने नेतृत्वकर्ता के इस परिश्रम और पुरुषार्थ के साथ अपने आप को जोड़े। मेरे प्रिय कार्यकर्ता साथियों, यदि भाजपा आज विश्व की सबसे बड़ी राजनीतिक दल बनी है तो इसका मुख्य कारण हमारा प्रेरणादायी नेतृत्व है, हमारा विचारधारा है और हमारे लाखों कार्यकर्ताओं का मेहनत है। वो कार्यकर्ता जो बिना फोकस में आए अनवरत काम करता है, वो कार्यकर्ता जो कठिन से कठिन परिस्थिति में भी भारत का ध्वज झुकने नहीं देता है, वो कार्यकर्ता जो सीना ठोक के कहता है तेरा वैभव अमर रहे माँ, हम दिन चार रहे न रहे। आइए इस भारत की कल्पना को जो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी के नेतृत्व में लगातार हम आगे बढ़ रहे हैं, आज हम भी उस परिकल्पना के साथ अपने आप को जोड़ें। हमारे नेताओं कार्यकर्ताओं का परिश्रम ही है जो आज हम यहाँ तक पहुँचे हैं, लेकिन वर्तमान पीढ़ी को भी अपने हिस्से का त्याग, तपस्या और पुरुषार्थ करना होगा, क्योंकि विकसित भारत के अगर संकल्प को सिद्धि तक पहुंचाना है, एक ऐसा भारत जहां समृद्धि भी हो, सशक्त भी हो, समरस भी हो, आत्मनिर्भर भी हो, तो हमारे कालखंड के कार्यकर्ताओं को भी अपने हिस्से का पुरुषार्थ, त्याग और तपस्या करना पड़ेगा। साथियों, हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी ने हमेशा अलग अलग समूहों की बात की। अमृतकाल के लिए 4 समूहों की जो बात की, उसमें युवा, महिला, किसान और गरीब है। हमें अब इन नई पहचानों के साथ आगे बढ़ना है, तभी हम आधुनिक, प्रगतिशील और विकसित भारत की कल्पना को साकार कर पाएंगे। आज 15 अगस्त 2024 के दिन जब माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने आज भी उसकी चर्चा की, और 15 अगस्त 2024 को जब लाल किले की प्राचीर से माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने युवाओं को सार्वजनिक जीवन में आने का आह्वान किया, तो मैं देश के युवाओं से कहना चाहूँगा, राजनीति से दूरी समाधान नहीं, सक्रिय भागीदारी ही समाधान है। आइए एक सकारात्मक राजनीति के लिए युवाओं को आगे आने की आवश्यकता है। लेकिन साथ ही साथ मैं युवा साथियों से कहूँगा, मेरे भाइयों, राजनीति शॉर्टकट नहीं है, राजनीति 100 मीटर का रेस नहीं है, राजनीति लॉन्ग मैराथन है, जहां स्पीड का नहीं स्टेमिना का टेस्ट होगा। तो आइए राजनीति के इस पिच पर हम अपनी जड़ों को मजबूत कर काम करें। और भारतीय जनता पार्टी का वॉच टावर तो बहुत स्ट्रांग होता है मित्रों, इसलिए आप अपने बूथ में निरंतर रूप से काम करते रहिए, अपने मंडल में काम करते रहिए। भाजपा का वॉच टावर, भाजपा का केंद्रीय नेतृत्व इतना मजबूती तरीके से हर पारी से नजर रखता है, कहीं ना कहीं आपको भी उस मुकाम तक पहुंचाएगा। साथियों, आज जब भारतीय जनता पार्टी के कार्यकर्ता माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी अभी हम सबको बता रहे थे कि किस प्रकार से पंचायत से पार्लियामेंट तक का सफर के लिए हर एक कार्यकर्ता लगे, हम आज इस अवसर पर जहां केरल, महाराष्ट्र, गोवा और अरुणाचल प्रदेश के स्थानीय निकायों में हुई शानदार जीत के लिए अपने सभी कार्यकर्ताओं को और उस क्षेत्र की जनता का भी आभार व्यक्त करते हैं। लेकिन मित्रों, अगर पंचायत से पार्लियामेंट का सफर तय करना है और लगातार हर जगह पर भारतीय जनता पार्टी का परचम लहराना है, तो हमको अपने समय के लिए पूरा मेहनत और परिश्रम की पराकाष्ठा करनी होगी। क्योंकि अगर 2047 का विकसित भारत बनाना है तो हमको भी अपने पूरे मेहनत और परिश्रम के साथ उसमें जुड़ना होगा। साथियों, हाल में हमने देखा किस प्रकार से तमिलनाडु के एक पहाड़ी के पवित्र कार्तिकेय दीपम को रोकने का प्रयास विपक्षी दलों के द्वारा किया गया। यह नहीं है किसी रोकने के लिए विपक्ष के लोगों ने साजिश नहीं की। हमें याद है, हम लोग अभी हाल में देख रहे थे किस प्रकार से न्यायाधीश के विरुद्ध भी महाभियोग लाने का प्रयास किया गया। आज हम जब सोमनाथ की बात करते हैं और स्वाभिमान पर्व मनाने की प्रयास करते हैं तो विपक्षी दलों के लोगों को तकलीफ होती है। हमारा मानना है कि इस तरह की परंपराओं को रोकने वाली ताकतों को परास्त करने की आवश्यकता है। राम सेतु के अस्तित्व को नकारने वाले, कार्तिकेय दीपम का विरोध करने वाली ताकतों को भारत की राजनीति में अब कोई स्थान नहीं मिल सकता, ऐसा हमें प्रयास करना है। साथियों, अगले कुछ महीने में तमिलनाडु, असम, बंगाल, केरल और पुडुचेरी में चुनाव होने जा रहा है और वहाँ की डेमोग्राफी की पूरी चर्चा हो रही है। किस प्रकार से बदले हुए डेमोग्राफी में वहाँ चीज़ें बदल रही हैं और हमारे लिए अपने आप में एक चुनौती है। लेकिन हम पूरी तरह से आश्वस्त हैं कि भाजपा का कार्यकर्ता अपने संघर्ष और परिश्रम के बल पर इन 5 राज्यों में सशक्त भाजपा का नेतृत्व प्रदान करने जाएगा। और हम हमेशा विश्वास करते हैं कि हमें अपनी आस्थाओं के केंद्र के लिए और सनातन परंपराओं को केंद्र को बचाने की लड़ाई अगर लड़नी है तो निश्चित रूप से अपने देश को सुरक्षित रखने की लड़ाई लड़नी है तो इन 5 राज्यों में हमें एक मजबूत ताकत बन के आना है। आज हमारे राष्ट्र की चेतना का उद्घोष का समय वंदे मातरम का 150वीं वर्षगांठ मना रहे हैं। वंदे मातरम का स्मरण आते ही मन में ऊर्जा और उत्साह बढ़ जाता है। हमें पूरा ध्यान में है कि एक एक व्यक्ति जब वंदे मातरम का जय घोष करता है तो उसके अंदर से जो ऊर्जा आती है वही ऊर्जा इस देश को आगे बढ़ाने में काम आती है। तो आइए हम सबको मिलकर 150वीं वर्षगांठ को हर जन जन तक पहुंचाएं, हर युवा तक पहुंचाएं, हर महिला तक पहुंचाएं, क्योंकि वंदे मातरम हमारे अंदर का वो विश्वास है जो इस देश के विकास के साथ जुड़ेगा। सत्ता को सेवा का माध्यम बनाते हुए माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने पिछले 25 वर्षों में जिस प्रकार से सरकार के मुखिया के रूप में गुजरात में और अब देश के प्रधानमंत्री के रूप में भारत के विकास में लगातार अब काम कर रहे हैं, निश्चित रूप से आपका प्रेरणादायी नेतृत्व हम जैसे नए कार्यकर्ताओं के लिए, हम जैसे पार्टी के कार्यकर्ताओं के लिए एक मापदंड है जिसको हम लोग निश्चित रूप से आपसे सीखते हैं। और मैं तो कहूँगा कि जिस सुशासन को मॉडल को आपने पूरे देश और विश्व में स्थापित किया है, अन्य सभी राज्य सरकारों को भी उस मॉडल के साथ काम करना चाहिए, तभी हम विकास के सही मापदंड को अंतिम व्यक्ति तक पहुंचा पाएंगे। आइए हम सब मिलकर विकसित भारत के संकल्प को पूरा करने की भागीदारी सुनिश्चित करें। एक शक्तिशाली गतिमान संगठन के साथ राष्ट्र निर्माण की इस यात्रा को नई ऊंचाइयों तक लेके चले। भारत माता की जय। वंदे मातरम।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आदरणीय नितिन नवीन जी। आपके प्रेरणादायी शब्दों से पूरे देश का भारतीय जनता पार्टी का कार्यकर्ता आपके शब्दों पे चलेगा, ये मुझे विश्वास है। मैं आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी सभी नेताओं का धन्यवाद करता हूं और अभी हम सब राष्ट्रगान से इस कार्यक्रम की समाप्ति करेंगे।
अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा, विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा, तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तव जय गाथा, जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता, जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।
भारत माता की। हम सब अपने अपने स्थान पर बैठ जाएं। पद का वहां जहां पर स्थान ग्रहण करेंगे। सभी कार्यकर्ता अपने अपने स्थान पर बैठ जाएं। कृपया 2 छोटी सूचना देता हूं। मुझे पता है कईयों को विटामिन डी आज जरा ज्यादा मिल रहा है। अध्यक्ष जी को लगा इसकी आवश्यकता है, इसलिए शायद इस प्रकार की व्यवस्था की होगी। जरा कृपया बैठ जाए, सभी बैठ जाए कृपया। अभी नवनिर्वाचित अध्यक्ष निर्वाचित होने पर आप सबको यहां मिठाई दी जाएगी, उसका स्वाद लीजिए, आनंद लीजिए। और वहां जो बिहार के हमारे कार्यकर्ता है, इस तरफ भी दिल्ली के जो कार्यकर्ता है, आपको कार्यालय विस्तारित कार्यालय है वहां भोजन के लिए आपको निकलना है। सामने बैठे हुए थोड़े और बैठे जरा, कृपया आप बैठ जाए। सामने बैठे हुए जो प्रदेश के पदाधिकारी, राष्ट्रीय परिषद सदस्य है, कल जहां पर फॉर्म भरने के पहले हमने पेंडोल में भोजन किया, वहां आप सब पहले भोजन के लिए जाएंगे। सामने बैठे हुए सभी प्रदेश पदाधिकारी, प्रदेश अध्यक्ष, राज्य परिषद सदस्य, राष्ट्रीय परिषद सदस्य, ये जो सामने बैठे हैं वो पीछे पेंडोल में भोजन के लिए जाएंगे। मैं आपको कहूंगा तब हम निकलेंगे। ऊपर जो माननीय मुख्यमंत्री, केंद्रीय मंत्री, पार्लियामेंट्री बोर्ड के सदस्य बैठे हैं, वो मल्टीपर्पज हॉल में भोजन के लिए जाएंगे। जो स्थान दिया है वहीं पर हम भोजन के लिए जाएंगे, तो आगे चलकर आदरणीय राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष जी को मिलना यह आसान हो जाएगा। तो यहां बैरिकेड के पीछे जो बिहार के कार्यकर्ता, आप सामने विस्तार में निकलिए भोजन के लिए, आप निकल सकते हैं सामने। सुरक्षा कर्मी कृपया माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी को आने के लिए अभी 20 मिनट है, उसके पहले यह रास्ता क्रॉस करके सामने भोजन के लिए जाए। यहां भी गेट खोल दीजिए पीछे वाला, और आप सब बैठे रहिए तब तक। यहां जरा गेट खोल दीजिए, सबको उस तरफ जाने दीजिए। बाकी जो विटामिन डी ले रहे जरा रुको, विश्वास सतर्क बसा।
Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sunset TV. I am Tina Jha. Every economy transforms with time. Industries grow, consumption patterns evolve, and new technologies reshape how we produce, trade, and live. To ensure that headline economic indicators truly mirror these shifts, the base year on which they are calculated must be revised periodically. In India, the current base years 2011-12 for GDP, Index of Industrial Production IIP, and Wholesale Price Index WPI, and 2012 for the Consumer Price Index the CPI are now more than a decade old. In this period, the structure of our economy has changed dramatically. Recognizing the need to capture these changes with greater accuracy, the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation announced a revised schedule for updating the base years of key indicators 2022-23 for GDP and IIP and 2024 for CPI. To understand the progress so far, the methodology that is being followed, also the challenges in this critical exercise of revising the base year, we are joined today by Mr. Saurabh Garg, Secretary, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, the man who has been at the helm of this exercise. Mr. Garg, thank you for your time. Welcome to Sunset TV.
Thank you. Thank you for calling me.
So, let's understand with the basics. Explain to us and our viewers what is a base year with reference to the national accounts, the CPI and the IIP.
Yeah. So, base year is the reference year which is used for calculating the prices which are used for in the GDP. For the CPI, it's also the base year for the or the reference year for the prices, and it's used for the based on the in that the inflation is calculated. And similarly in the IIP, the change in production is calculated using the base of the reference year. So all the three are very important in order to be able to compare from year to year what are the changes that are happening, and the changes that are happening which are a consequence of the output or the production and not because of the prices alone.
Right.
So that's very important to distinguish between the changes happening because of increase in price and the changes happening because changes in quantity. And that is the difference that the base year helps give to all economists, forecasters and the citizens.
So what happens if the base year is not revised periodically?
Essentially, if it is not revised periodically, number one, there are 2 or 3 things which happen. Number one, that methodologies change over time. So as internationally, these are calculated based on methodologies and processes which are determined internationally. So you are not keeping in pace with that, and therefore it becomes obsolete in some aspects. The second is that the structure of the economy changes over time. For example, over the past decade, we have a much greater intensification of the digital processes. While some of these get captured, but there could be areas where it is not effectively getting captured. So the structure of the economy changes.
Right.
Apart from this, there are new data sources that come up over time. So the granularity that we have now is based on what were the data sources available maybe a decade back. So with the increasing change in technology, change in systems, you have new data sources available. So a combination of the change of the economy, change of the data sources and changing technologies, all of these impact the base year. It's not to say that if the base year is not changed, we don't capture any of these 3 areas. We do capture them, but it's always better to have a more up-to-date reference here to ensure that you are capturing it very, very effectively.
That's right, keeping pace with the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was about what a base year is and why it's important to revise the base year periodically. If you could elaborate more on what is the rebasing exercise and why is it significant?
Before I go into the present rebasing exercise, because one of the questions that might come up, that why wasn't it done earlier? And normally it would have been done somewhere around 2019-20, but that's when COVID happened.
Right.
So because of COVID, the consumption patterns changed, labor, nature of labor and migration of labor changed. So therefore one had to wait for those impacts to settle down. Otherwise, those impacts would continue to show up in any of the indices that we would have developed. So I just wanted to mention that to clarify that. Now coming to the process of change that we follow. We've been under this at it since about nearly 2 years now. For each of the economic indicators, and these are 3 of the major ones, the GDP, CPI and IIP, we've formulated expert committees which have people who are familiar with this, either in terms of that they have done this earlier or that academically they have researched on these topics, because there's a lot of research which is done. So keeping that in view, we have formed different expert committees, in fact separate ones for each of the 3 economic indices that we're talking about. Within that also, for example, GDP is the most important, if I can put it, and the one which is quoted very often, that determines the size of the economy, the standing among nations globally, and where we stand in terms of economic strength. We have in fact created 5 subcommittees, and looking at methodologies, looking at technology that is to be used, looking at the rates and ratios that have to be used, a host of technical issues which I don't want to get into the details of. But the fact remains that there are a large number of activities. For example, you have to capture every activity which is going on in the economy.
That's right.
Whether it's on the agriculture side, whether it's on the industrial or manufacturing side, or it is on the services side. And in each of these you have a host of, there are hotels and restaurants, and there is production of steel, and there's production of electricity, and then you have all the crops and horticulture, etc. So there is a large amount of data which goes into production or development of the GDP. So looking at each of these sectors, within the sectors, looking at each of these items, and which are thousands of them, and what are the changes that have happened, and what are the data sources that can be used to capture them, to be able to find out what is the periodicity of those data sources. Some of them are available real time, some are available monthly, some quarterly, some only annually. So looking at all of these, we have these groups looking at it, and this work has been going on, and now that work is coming towards the last phase, and in the next few weeks and within a few months we hope to close this activity.
Can you give us an exact date of by when can we expect the revision?
Yes, I mean that date we have already announced. In fact, we have different dates for each of them. The CPI, which is the price index, the inflation, that will come out first. That will come out on February 12th. And why I'm saying February 12th, it's not a date that has been picked out just like that. It's just that every 12th of every month, we release the consumer price index, whether it's the 12th of November or the 12th of December. And the January figures we will be bringing out on February the 12th. So since we are changing the base year from the beginning of the calendar year of 26, that data will come out on February 12th. The GDP figures we bring out on the February of 28th, an advance estimate for the entire year. That is the current year, which is 2025-2026. We'll be bringing out, it's called the second advance estimate. We will be bringing out a first advance estimate on the 7th of January, but by that time we will not be ready with the new base year, and the first advance estimate will come out as per the existing base, which is also used in the budget purposes. Okay. So the second advance estimate, which comes out on February 28th, would be with the revised base year. And the IIP requires inputs based on the revised GDP numbers and the inflation index, and therefore it will come out later. And the April numbers of the index for industrial production, we will be bringing out in May. We bring it out on the end of May. 28th of May is when we bring out the 28th of every month we bring out. So we can expect the IIP numbers towards the end of May.
So you've spoken about this elaborate exercise that has been underway for the last several months now. I'm sure you experienced several challenges, but we'll come to that later. You also mentioned the COVID pandemic, and because of which it didn't happen earlier. So the question that comes to mind is, given the disruption that was caused by COVID, how do you ensure that this chosen period represents a normal economic year?
Yeah. So, if you remember, the COVID really struck during 20 and then again in 21. So, following that period, we did a lot of these activities depend on a few of these surveys that we do, and two surveys I would especially mention, two or maybe three I would like to mention. One is the household consumption expenditure survey, which determines what are the kind of items that people consume and purchase on a regular basis. Okay. And that really determines what are the prices that an household faces on items of daily consumption, which is very important for the consumer price index. So we did two back-to-back surveys in 22-23 and 23-24, and the reason we did that was to essentially check whether the normalcy has been restored in terms of household expenditure, in terms of household consumption, in terms of other activities of the households, and similarly on the industrial side, whether normalcy has come back. And it was good to see that the differences, if any, between 22-23 data and 23-24 data were very minimal. And that's why we decided, and the expert committee decided, that 22-23 is a good year to take back, and because all the indices have come back to the pre-COVID levels, or keeping in view what is expected. Okay. So that's one of the main reasons that we have selected 22-23. And similarly on the industrial side also, industrial production had ramped up. So that's the reason why we have chosen 22-23 for this. For the prices, we need to collect prices for an entire calendar year. And we started that collection during January 24, and that's how the prices were collected for the year 2024. and that's the base year for the CPI. Even if you look at the previous editions, there's a difference between the base year of GDP IIP, which was 2011-12, and CPI was calculated on the prices of 2012. So it depends on each of the peculiarities of an index, and that's how the decision for the base year is taken.
Okay, so after this happens, what changes are expected in the GDP series?
So I can't predict what would be the change in the numbers.
What is the assessment?
Yeah. Let us see what the numbers throw up. But as I mentioned, given the fact that the structure of the economy has changed, given the fact that some parts of the economy have really grown, especially the digital parts of the economy, and given the fact that we have more variety of data that is now available, definitely the accuracy of the numbers, the robustness of the numbers would definitely improve. And the fact that we have now more near real-time data, for example, we have data which was not available earlier, e-Vahan data on roads and transport vehicles, etc. We have GST data, which gives a much better idea of what are the production and the consumption, what is there. So definitely in terms of the accuracy and robustness of the data, it will definitely improve. The numbers are something which we'll only get to know once they come out.
So in terms of accuracy, of course, it's going to benefit, but are there any other benefits also attached to the changes that will occur after the revision?
So all these indices are used extensively for decision making. And in fact, the tagline for the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation is data for development. And our focus is whatever data that can be made available for better policy making, for better decisions, that is our focus. And with more up-to-date data, with data which reflects the current structure of production, current structure of consumption, and what people are doing and what industries are doing, that helps decision making and making decisions which are much more tuned with the present requirements of the people. And given all this, it's essential that the data remains up to date. And one more thing that will happen with this is that we will be becoming much more granular in the data that is available. We are looking at sectorally, for example, that we can look at price indices not only at the national level, but also ensuring that at the state level, we are able to give changes in price index. We are looking at different sectors, whether it's fruits and vegetables or whether it's education or housing, things which directly concern people, how we can ensure that greater robustness and accuracy of the figures are there. We are also working with state governments to look at which of these data can be even given at the district level, so that even at the district level, decision making is based on much more accurate data. So a combination of this, looking at it sectorally in a much, and similarly in the, whether you talk of GDP or you talk of IIP, even in GDP, we are looking at, obviously, GSDP is gross state domestic product. That figures will become much more robust, and each state will know what exactly is the state domestic product. We are also working with state governments, and some states are moving ahead in that whether at district level, some kind of an economic product, I won't call it a district domestic product, but at least some kind of an economic indicator is available at the district level. So that will give an idea of what is happening to the different districts. And this will also be very, very useful, for example, for the private sector, to look at where the kind of investments that they can make, where growth is happening, where labor would be more amenable to stay given the quality of life that would be available. So I think decision making and the focus on ensuring that the decisions happen in a manner which are much more in tune with what is happening on the ground will be there. And if I can add one other aspect is, for example, on the IIP, we'll be giving sectoral breakup also. For example, we look at energy consumption. What is it as per the new and renewable sources of energy? What is it as per conventional sources? On the mining sector, we are looking at minor minerals, which we were not doing adequately now. So what I'm saying is there will be much more granularity of information available, which will help both the government, policymakers at the national, state and district levels, as well as the private sector to take decisions.
Since you covered a lot of ground on the progress and the elaborate exercise that's been conducted, it involves a lot of data, it involves a lot of coordination with the different stakeholders. Also tell us about the challenges that you faced, because it's easier to describe how it went on, but given the time that it has taken, but in context of the availability of data, in terms of the industry reporting, in terms of how you integrated different sources of information, what are some of the key challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them?
So as you mentioned, this is a very data heavy exercise. Right. It entirely depends, and I must compliment the citizens of the country who have been participating, cooperating, collaborating with the field staff of the National Statistics Office on a year-to-year basis in giving information about their consumption patterns, about the educational levels, about the kind of work that they are doing, because these are very, very important ingredients before we do a periodic labor force survey, in which our field staff and enumerators go from house to house to understand what are the kind of skill levels they have, what are the kinds of work that they are doing, how many are self-employed, how many are working for wages in the agricultural or other sectors. And I must say that every day, one of our around more than 8,000 enumerators and staff go to some household, to some enterprise, to some unit to collect data. And that data really forms the basis of all these activities. So first of all, I must thank all the citizens of the country for cooperating and giving this data. Equally important is the data that the industrial units give, the enterprises give, because there is an annual survey of the unincorporated sector, which gives us an idea of the informal sector. We collect data from the balance sheets of the formal companies, and our people go out there also to validate that data. So I think the kind of support we get from the industries, from the industry associations, I would like to thank them for cooperating in this. And the third, if I can add, is a lot of this data is collected from within the government, within the central government, from the state governments, from public sector agencies, and other agencies and bodies associated with the government. And all that data also comes to us on a regular basis. And I must thank them too for providing data. But when you have such a large number of stakeholders, there will always be some areas where there are problems, where there are issues, where there are doubts. And those doubts, I would say, are very valid, because they are sharing data, and very often they have some apprehension about how it will be used, whether their personal information will not be released somewhere. So I must assure all of them, and I think for the past 75 years, the National Statistics Office has been doing this, and there never has been a case of any data which can be identifiable to an individual or to an enterprise having gone out in the public domain. We are very careful of that, and we maintain that anonymity. So I think the only problem, if at all, the challenge that we have is the challenge to assure everyone that the data that we use is only used for statistical purposes at an aggregate level, and we really don't bother about the individual data, but we ensure that that data remains inaccessible to anyone. So challenges are many, but I think with the cooperation of all, we've been able to surmount them, and I'm confident we'll be able to do so in future too.
So, of course, significant progress has now led us to this stage where the revision is expected in the next few weeks. Do you expect to stick to this 5-year revision calendar from now on?
Yeah, internationally, that is what is recommended, around a 5-year and that is adequate to capture the changes in economic structure, consumption patterns, etc. So broadly, that would be the periodicity, but very often things happen which require a change. The COVID, for example, happened last time around. So, but broadly, that is the objective. And the components of the various components that go into making these indices, we are ensuring that we do them at a slightly more frequent level, so that we have up-to-date data available to us at any time that we require the changes to be done.
So we've spoken about the progress, the methodology in greater detail, of course also the outcome and the impact. Before we wind up the conversation, one forward-looking question from you about your larger vision for modernizing India's statistical system over the next decade, because now we are a digital economy growing at a very rapid pace. Data is the new gold, and it's important to have a system which is not just safe and secure but also accurate.
Yeah.
So what is your vision for the next decade to strengthen India's statistical ecosystem?
Yeah. As I would say, data is in a way becoming the fifth factor of production. We have traditionally had land, labor, capital and technology as the four main factors of production. And I think going forward, data would be that fifth factor. And especially with greater penetration of artificial intelligence, which is entirely data based, it's extremely essential that Indian data and data that is available not only with the government but other data which reflects the Indian economy, the Indian social levels, that data is machine readable. So one of our focus areas going forward is to ensure that data that is produced within the government by the central government or the state government is data which is harmonized, which is interoperable, which is intercomparable with other data. And for that, it needs to follow certain classifications, certain standards, follow machine readability, because it's essential that whether it's AI or machine language, they are able to pick up credible data from India, because nothing operates in a vacuum. And in case credible data about India is not available, that vacuum might be filled up by other data. So going forward, the Ministry of Statistics is focused on ensuring that credible and accurate data about India is available in a format which is technologically which is amenable to be used by technology, and that's the focus going forward.
And have you already begun working on that roadmap?
Yes, absolutely. That is something that we are working on with other ministries, along with ensuring that it is technology savvy or technology prone, if I can use that word. We are also ensuring that the timeliness, the frequency of the data, the granularity of the data improves, so that the correct narrative about India is available internationally and in India, and everyone realizes the kind of changes that are happening, and it's important that the data captures those changes. So that is something that we are working on, and with the support of all, we hope to achieve that goal going forward.
We wish you the very best with achieving that goal. Time allows us to take up only that much on the program. Thank you once again, Mr. Garg, for joining us and explaining to us about what this base year revision exercise has been all about, the changes that it will bring about, also the benefits attached to it for every stakeholder. And once the revision is announced in February 2026, as the Secretary of the Ministry informed us, we'll wait and see what real impact it's going to have on different economic indicators. So with that, we'll have to wind up this program. Thank you once again to you viewers for your valuable time as well.
संसद टीवी के और भी प्रोग्राम्स देखने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करें हमारा यूट्यूब चैनल और हाँ, इन्हें लाइक और शेयर करना ना भूलें।
Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sunset TV. I'm Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. As another year comes to a close, the world remains at a defining crossroads marked by shifting power equations, deepening geopolitical fault lines, economic anxieties and a global order under visible strain. In this turbulent international landscape, India's foreign policy was not just tested during the year gone by, it was actively exercised, shaped and asserted. This was a year when India stepped out with clarity and confidence, strengthening strategic partnerships across regions, deepening its engagement with countries in the global south, and shaping global conversations on trade, technology, energy, climate action, and security. Amid intensifying power rivalries, India remained firmly anchored in strategic autonomy, guided by national interest and its long-term vision. From sustained bilateral outreach to deeper strategic partnerships, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's foreign engagements in 2025 reflected India's evolving priorities, development with sustainability, growth with responsibility, and leadership with balance. In this special edition of Perspective, we look back at the year that was, India's diplomacy, its strategic choices, its global messaging, and what these choices tell us about India's place in a rapidly changing world. Joining me are three eminent guests. I'm delighted to welcome on this edition of Perspective Professor Srikanth Kondrapalli. He's professor at the Center for East Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Professor, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the program. Joining us virtually is Ambassador Veena Sikri, former diplomat. Ambassador, always a pleasure to have you with us on our programs. And Professor Dr. Sriram Cholia, Dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs. Professor, delighted to have you with us on this edition of Perspective as well. Welcome to the program. So there are multiple aspects of India's foreign policy about which we will talk about in due course of the program. But to begin with, Professor Kondrapalli, how would you characterize India's foreign policy in the year 2025?
I think from turbulence we learnt a lot and then stabilized the whole situation. One of the things is, of course, the August 27th tariffs imposed by the United States on India, 50% tariffs, and that was expected to affect the economy, but we bounced back. 7.2% growth rate in the quarter one and 8.2 in quarter two and then 7.4 in quarter three. So that should make it about 6.5, 6.6 for the whole year. That's an impressive growth rate, despite the headwinds in the. Our FDI has increased. Also, the kind of exports we have made is quite impressive. And I think in this turbulent, we have had the Operation Sindoor, which really is a major event in our history. We applied high technology and also preemptive, shutdown to the conflict. Although it is in abeyance, the Operation Sindoor, yet I think the application of precision-guided munitions and the kind of response India had on the Pahalgam terror attacks, I think we have given a very clear picture on zero tolerance to terrorism, wherever it is emanating from. And I also think that the stabilization is also in the part of at the global level and regional level. The FTAs that we signed with UK, Oman and New Zealand, as well as the trade arrangements with Australia, with other countries are intact. ASEAN, South Korea, Japan and other countries. The IMEC project has not really taken off because of the conflict in West Asia, but we are also looking at the UAE as well as Israel FTA, in addition to the European Union FTA talks that have already commenced, and one with the GCC countries. So this should augur well for our economic growth rate, and which also means that this stabilization is important for us in order to project towards the global supply chains and so on. We have also had the space cooperation, space related activities quite impressive. We had 100th launch this January, and the new launchers have been put in place, and we are making efforts for the manned spacecraft to the space. That means that even in technological sphere there has been a lot of progress. So I think overall we should be satisfied with the 2025 how it is ending. Of course, we have some turbulence in the neighborhood, but that should be managed in the future. As we keep on growing at 6 to 7% growth rate, that should also translate into attracting a number of neighboring countries in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the arrangements we make with BIMSTEC, with BBI and other countries. So we should end the year with satisfaction, with especially in terms of the growth rates that we picked up despite the headwinds caused by the United States tariffs.
That's right. Despite the global complexities, the global headwinds, the regional tensions, which took a whole lot of our effort as well in the early part of the year 2025 is ending on a high note because of the strategic partnerships that we've had with countries in terms of how economic diplomacy has taken center stage in our outreach. We'll talk about all of these aspects, but Ambassador, your opening remark on, as the year draws to a close, what is the most significant achievement in terms of India's diplomacy that you would like to highlight?
Well, I think first we have to recall or remember and realize that 2025 has been a tremendously turbulent year globally. I mean, perhaps it's not in many decades that such a globally turbulent year has been seen, and many are talking about whether Third World War has already started. Just look at the two conflicts, the Ukraine conflict, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and the Hamas-Israel conflict. I think this has led to, and they don't show any signs of, even though there's a peace plan being discussed for Ukraine and something that is supposed to be in place for Israel and Gaza, there is no evidence of the conflict and the turmoil ending. But I think, again, I would say that India's role in both of these as a peacemaker, as a person who's bringing sides together, who is willing to talk to both sides and focus on dialogue and diplomacy and not on conflict, calling for an end to conflict. This role of India has been recognized very much. And you know that Prime Minister Modi has been, and I would like to recall President Putin's visit to India very recently towards the end of the year, when it was an excellent visit, very strongly based on discussions on not only on the Ukraine conflict, but on other things. And President Zelensky has been in touch with our Prime Minister. So this aspect of India, and led by Prime Minister Modi, playing a big role in all conflicts, in all events in the world. I think this is very important. Now, even for us in our region, I think it has been a year of great conflict. Look at Operation Sindoor, the absolutely dastardly attacks on the innocent pilgrims, innocent tourists in Pahalgam. I mean, this was an unheard of kind of, again, breaking the peace in this cruel manner, drawing attention to religion in this manner, which is, was absolutely reacted to with people were aghast in India. And Operation Sindoor followed, was able to establish India's military and technological superiority in dealing with this. I think the worldwide, many people are now studying, how Operation Sindoor was conducted, how without even crossing the border, using technology, and how we were able to resist through our S-400s and other air defense systems, the attacks which Pakistan tried to launch on us, and how we in return, through the BrahMos missiles and others, were able to, and BrahMos, again, made in India with Russian technological cooperation, has been a tremendous pointer, this movement towards Atmanirbharta. I'm bringing together this because, this movement towards Atmanirbharta, our economic growth and development, is very much tied in with India's security in the world, with India's position in the world, and this interaction between, the global scenario, the Indian scenario, and India's Atmanirbharta move in defense has been playing a significant role in making the world realize India's strong position in the world. Economically, India now very soon going to be the third largest economy in the world. We already have crossed from the fifth, we become the fourth, and now very soon the third largest economy in the world. And the news about economic growth in this year has been very strong, and I would especially like to appreciate the importance of this role, despite the situation in our neighborhood, despite Operation Sindoor. Operation Sindoor was such a success, but we took it so much in our stride. We continued that. We did not let Operation Sindoor in any way disorient or disorder the economic growth and the internal stability of the country, and that itself is very important. But then we have to also see there were other disruptive events in our neighborhood. I'm talking about Bangladesh, the regime change operation of July-August 2024, which has continued into this year, and the regime change operation in Nepal as well earlier this year. So for our neighborhood, while India continues to focus on developing relations with our neighbors, and even in Bangladesh, you could see that India from the very first day offered to continue the economic cooperation. We've been exercising a great deal of strategic restraint in our dealings with Bangladesh, and we offer to continue the cooperation. We have not restricted the trade, the goods flowing for the humanitarian needs of the people there. But from the Bangladesh side, we have seen that what is projected as a revolution, as a student spontaneous uprising, is not that at all. It's not been a revolution. It's not been spontaneous at all. It's not a students' uprising. It has been a meticulously designed regime change operation. And these are the words used by Muhammad Yunus himself, speaking in New York, at the when he went for the UNGA, speaking at the Global Clinton Initiative. He said, don't think it happened spontaneously. It was meticulously designed. And he introduced the mastermind, who is Mahfouz Alam, his own special assistant, who's well known as a member of the Hizb ut-Tahrir. So it is the attempt of the Islamist groups led by Jamaat-e-Islami, backed by Pakistan, and in turn backed by external powers. It is that attempt which has brought this regime change and forced Sheikh Hasina to come to India. But even every effort that India made to normalize and continue the economic cooperation with the new government of the day has not succeeded, because Muhammad Yunus has turned his back on continuing the cooperation. He's either suspended or changed or reversed economic cooperation aspects. All this has led to a complete deterioration in the economy of Bangladesh, which has been a big negative for them. But still, till today, the violence as we speak is continuing. The regime of Muhammad Yunus wanted to postpone elections for 4 years and bring in reforms, but the people insisted on early elections. But even the preparation for those elections, because they want to ban the Awami League from participating in those elections, and they had banned the activities of the Awami League, this has led to its own internal turmoil. And the Islamist parties are trying to get the upper hand. We know there's been the killing of Osman Hadi, there's been the cruel attacks on the minorities in Bangladesh, the Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, Sufis, and Ahmadiyyas, and the inhuman killing of Dipu Chandra Das just a few days ago. All this has shown that the instability in Bangladesh is a cause for serious worry.
Absolutely. This is a huge challenge that persists in our neighborhood. This is something that we are going to find perhaps a new way to deal with the problem, because the manner in which the violence is escalating, the manner in which the Hindus are being targeted in Bangladesh is something that is a huge cause of concern for India, and this will be a challenge in the coming year as well. We'll focus on some of the priorities and the challenges in the year 2026, but coming back to some of the significant gains that we made in the year 2025, which comes to a close. Professor Cholia, one of the defining features of our foreign policy in 2025 has been the centrality of economic diplomacy, something that Professor Kondapalli also spoke about. It's been marked by the conclusion of FTAs with the UK, with Oman. We finalized the FTA with New Zealand. Do these agreements together signal a structural shift of sorts in how India views trade as an economic tool, not just as an economic tool, in fact, but as a more important strategic instrument of foreign policy, which has now taken centrality in the manner in which we deal with countries in different parts of the world?
Yes, Tina, I think 2025 was the year of resilience against adversity, as my co-panelists have been saying. And one of the features of this resilience has been diversification of partnerships in the economic realm, so as to reduce over dependence on any single market, given the resort to economic nationalism and protectionism and the trade wars unleashed by the US in particular. We have been on the lookout to fast forward many of these negotiations and to conclude them faster, quicker. And we have found willing partners on the other side who, of course, want access to the big and growing Indian market. For them, it's a no-brainer. I mean, we have 600, 700 million middle class, and with high economic growth, this is the big winner, especially for a country like the UK, for example. I mean, from their point of view, after the Brexit, this is the biggest single economic deal that they have entered into, this with India. So I think we have our market power, our purchasing power is a major attraction, and also a major negotiating card with these countries because they want access. And in return, our export profile is growing. So we have negotiated with a lot of these countries in ways that will enhance our exports, goods, and in the case of smaller countries, even services exports. So I think that way, the contribution of trade to our growth is quite high. And percentage of trade of GDP of India is 40 or more. So therefore, I think this is going to be driving our growth in the future, and we have really emphasized a lot of it. I think full marks to Dr. Jaishankar and his team in External Affairs Ministry, also Mr. Piyush Goyal and his team in the Commerce Ministry, because together we have really sewn together all these agreements. The biggest one of them all, the game changer is going to be with the European Union. We have the EU leadership coming for the Republic Day in January 2026 after the new year, and I think I have no doubts that we will even cross that barrier, because the EU is going to be a near equal substitute of the US market for us. And on the basis of all that, of course, we will also conclude the bilateral trade agreement with the United States itself, which is not really an FTA, but simply trying to manage these tariffs that have been levied unfairly and unjustly on India earlier this year. So it shows that we are cognizant of our strengths, we are playing our cards, and in all these cases, the trust has been built up over a period of time. It's not like suddenly we woke up and said, okay, let's negotiate an FTA. We have been working on this for a while, and I think it shows inch by inch, year by year. 2024 is different from 25, different from 26 in that sense, because India's cumulative value in the eyes of our partners continues to grow. And as a result of which, we will also get more concessions from them in the give and take that is the norm for all these trade negotiations. And I think Professor Kondapalli also, and that was, a bit of a break. A couple of years ago, there was a dip. So now we are back on track, and, with the reforms that have been launched domestically in our economy, I think Indian market will look up in a big way in 2026 going forward. And we are expecting a lot of inward FDI, even our stock markets. So we are expecting more foreign institutional investors to come in. There have been a lot of volatility there. But overall, I think the prospects are looking good. So we have harnessed our domestic stability and reforms in order to win a lot of major international agreements and pacts. And I think that shows the core strength of the country, because we are not just talking out of thin air. We are going to these negotiations and to these rounds of talks with concrete things to show on the ground. Our infrastructure, all these things, people are noticing, the upgrades that are happening across the country, and these will ultimately matter. So Modi government deserves full marks for combining the domestic strengths and showcasing them in the international arena, and thereby winning more friends and tighter partnerships.
clearly that confidence and that transformation in approach has been clearly noticed in this year gone by in the face of global headwinds that we've already spoken about, but the resilience that India has shown in different aspects. You spoke about the diversification of partnerships, Professor. I'll take that question to you. We've seen that reflecting also in Prime Minister Modi's visits that he's undertaken in the year 2025 to countries across Africa, West Asia. It also includes countries in the Gulf. How do you interpret these diplomatic outreaches, not just as as an economic engagement event, but in the longer run for actually making India as a long-term partner of choice? Has that effort been visible in the manner in which the Prime Minister has reached out to these countries and the manner in which we've expanded our partnership to newer areas of cooperation?
I think with the shocks that we faced with the Trump administration, especially reversing the 25-year-old phenomena from the nuclear policy, civil nuclear policy of 1, 2, 3 in 2005-6. So going beyond this, we have diversified into the global South countries, and the G20 meeting in New Delhi has already configured African Union as a member of the G20, and so the trajectory was quite clear for us. And voice of the global South countries, the 3 summit meetings that we have conducted virtually, lays down the path for the visits to African countries, West Asia, the visit to Japan, where India secured some $68 billion of investment from Japan, as well as the Shinkansen, the high-speed railway project that Japan is trying to provide us with these technological inputs. So I think overall there has been a requirement of the focus on global South countries, partly because there is the economic engagement that has increased, as the other speakers have mentioned, as well as to diversify these partnerships. So this is a major factor. The United States has been a major factor, and our linking up with the global South is quite a natural choice for us, and hence these visits, I guess. But most importantly, as you mentioned, Tina, in your introductory remarks, that maintaining strategic autonomy, I think that is also very crucial. And so we opened up for Russia, China, and other countries. The border stability is one of the main features for us, requirements for us. And so the Kazan meeting in 2024, as well as the Tianjin visit by Prime Minister Modi to China in late August and early September. So these are the plans that we have had to stabilize the situation. And I think even though there are no concrete things on the table, apart from the reloads with Russia, nevertheless, that was very important signal that we gave to the United States, that the strategic autonomy will be upheld, as well as the Tianjin meeting photo op of the 3 leaders. That is also quite significant in terms of the messaging that we deliver to the United States, and hence the rethinking in the United States about that India is a natural friend. The other accolades that were mentioned by President Trump in his comments is an indicative of how the atmospherics have been changing in favor of India.
Absolutely. Ambassador, in fact, the Russian president's visit to India drew global attention. As Professor rightly said, it was significant in context of signaling, in context of India's strategic autonomy. But if I may ask you, what strategic value did his visit add in sort of meaningfully deepening the India-Russia partnership. It's a time-tested partnership. We have our partnership across a whole range of sectors. But in terms of taking it one notch higher, what is it that you assessed after this recent visit of the Russian president to India?
Well, I think the president of Russia, President Putin's visit was significant. Firstly, in the context of India's strategic autonomy, as Professor Kondapalli has said, this has been a steady feature of India's foreign policy. Earlier, it used to be called non-alignment. Now it's what we define as strategic autonomy and multi-alignment.
Yes.
I think that's very, very important, because it is this which not only I think, in a way, ensures us against ups and downs in any particular relationship, but it also means that India is able to fulfill its national security objectives, its economic development objectives, in a multi-aligned way. If one aspect doesn't work, you go to the other, second and third aspects and achieve your objectives with other countries. So this gives us a great deal of flexibility, and I think that President Putin's visit has opened up 2 or 3 important aspects. One is, of course, on the defense sector, the continuing cooperation, the possibility of increased deals even on the stealth fighters, and the determination to continue the earlier deals and get the spares, etc. That is very important. Continuing of joint production, joint technological work, and the willingness of Russia to transfer technology to India. That was very, very significant, but that's been reaffirmed, reasserted, and that's very significant for India's Atmanirbharta, for India's defense and security requirements, that in times of crisis, in times of need, we don't have to depend on anybody, but we have our own production facilities thanks to transfer of technology from key countries. It's not only Russia, France has also announced some very significant transfer of technology deals with Safran and so on. So I think this is a very important aspect. Second aspect, I think, of the visit would be the economic opening up of the Russian market for India. I think this is significant because this again provides alternative supply chain, alternative markets, gives us access to a whole new market. The Russian market is very sophisticated, demands are very high, but there are a number of commodities that India is exporting and Russia is importing. They are the same commodity but done from different countries. So there's a great deal of potential, whether it is high value garments, whether it is gems and jewelry, so many other consumer goods that India could supply to Russia, and opening up of the market and ensuring this access is very important. So I think that is why I would really say that this visit was very significant. But I will say that a number of Prime Minister's outgoing visits also were very significant in this context of strategic autonomy, in this context of showing our partnership with many regions and individual countries of the world. Absolutely. Our Prime Minister's visit to the SCO summit, for example, in Tianjin, and his meetings with President Xi Jinping and President Putin again. And then on this visit, he also went to Japan. And that was very significant because I think the Japan-India relationship, it is already in a very strong position, but the new strategic commitments to each other and the commitments that we will continue with our cooperation with Japan, in the very same context of maritime security, the very same context of strengthening defense cooperation and technological cooperation and economic trade is significant, because Quad or no Quad, our relationship with Japan, our relationship with Australia, these will be very significant aspects of what is happening in our bilateral relationship. I'd like to just give you one example of Prime Minister's visits in 2025, which shows how a Prime Minister during his visits reaches out to different countries of the world, and how the global South is very, very important for him. As you know, during the G20 summit in India, we showed our importance of the global South by bringing in the African Union and so on. But now, for example, in July of this year, our Prime Minister, went to Africa and Latin America. He went to Ghana, he went to Trinidad Tobago, he went to Brazil, and then he went to Argentina, and then he went to Namibia, on the way back. So you had a whole, geographically, a huge expanse of miles covered, but significance of this in the importance it gives to the global South and the successful outcomes of the visit in each country, and how the Prime Minister was welcomed in these countries, the bilateral cooperation, the awards he received from so many of these countries, how they valued his visit, and how other countries have been waiting for Prime Minister's visit so that you can develop the bilateral relationship, develop the regional relationship, and the multilateral. So, Prime
Certainly,
Minister.
we are seeing the country after country, that moral leadership that India has showcased in recent years is translating into tangible outcomes, and it's being acknowledged by these countries. The biggest reward for India is that it's being acknowledged by all of these countries in which with whom we are engaging in development partnership. The emphasis has been, Professor Cholia, on technology, on climate action, on issues of development, which India has rigged up not just during bilateral engagements but at different multilateral fora as well. Do you think we've managed, through these issues, we've managed to reshape the traditional notions of power, diplomacy and development?
Well, that's, I think, work in progress. But I think it will. One thing we have shown is in 2025 is, what I call a pivot to the self more than before. I mean, because there is a less of a cooperative dynamic and more of a conflicting dynamic around the world, especially involving major powers. So what we are trying to do is also, our external affairs minister has coined this three selves doctrine, self-reliance, self-protection and self-confidence. We have shown those in equal measure and in different domains. And I think, diplomatically, surely our convening power has risen. We will be hosting in the new year very important BRICS summit with more than 10 members now. Earlier it was only 5. So that is a very significant diplomatic event that's coming up. Probably after the G20 summit of 2023, the one coming up in 26 will be very, very significant. And we are laying the groundwork for it by being an active participant in BRICS. And many people argue, how is it that, you are part of Quad and also BRICS, and these are two opposing coalitions or alliances? Well, that's how, we've been able to keep our foot in multiple camps and gain the benefits from all sides. And I think that's going to continue. So in that sense, we are indeed showing that, we are a kind of a unique power in the world. A country that one is becoming more self-reliant and less dependent on others. And two, one that is also, capable of engaging with different sides and maybe even helping to bring some conflicts to an end. So I think that's really, and even in the regional, positioning, people are saying a neighborhood is in flames. Yes, there's a lot of turmoil, but at the same time, we are certainly in our own way managing to sustain our influence in a lot of these neighboring countries against the odds. So regimes are collapsing like nine pins, but India is clawing its way back. I mean, Afghanistan in this year, 2025, in my view, the outreach and the opening to the Taliban-ruled Afghanistan was a very, very big move. And of course, we had always been engaging with them behind the scenes, but we made it open and big, and we also turned it to our advantage and to the disadvantage of Pakistan. So I think apart from Operation Sindoor, which involved kinetic measures, the heat on the western side of Pakistan has really risen across the Durand line. And India is fully supportive of the sovereignty of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a weak country relative to Pakistan. And, there needs to be some balance there and some balance of power. And if there are not just economic but also military means by which we can help to equip the Afghans to withstand the Pakistani aerial attacks and incursions. I mean, the Pakistani politicians themselves are saying that if we oppose Indian attacks inside our territory, how are we carrying out attacks inside Afghan territory? So there is a problem there. And I think Pakistan is getting deeper and deeper into a quagmire. In that sense, I would say we have played our cards well. And even with Sri Lanka, with Maldives, with Nepal, all these countries where, in Maldives is another classic example where it was said that we had lost and China had won. But now we have turned the tables around. through patient and persistent diplomacy and through our first responder and our ability to give aid as well as other humanitarian relief and all these things. I think we are making a difference, and in the neighborhood also.
That's right. I think with the choices that we've made in this year, Professor Kondapalli, we've been able to send out strong messages to countries where development mattered. India has been a friend. To countries where we wanted to send a message against terrorism, we sent out a strong message. So it's been an assertive year. After what we can call it an eventful year for the manner in which we've sort of ducked the global uncertainties, but at the same time the regional challenges. Now, as we head into a new year, what do you see as the top foreign policy priorities? Will there be continuity? Will you see more kind of pragmatic approach to the manner in which we've reached out to the countries? Or will there be more transformative approaches in dealing with countries that we've so far held back?
I think the foreign policy perspective of India in 2026 should be on assisting India's economic growth rates. We need to maintain high economic growth rates. That is how we can circulate goods and services to the rest of the humanity. Number one. Number two, maintain stability and expand the neighborhood first policy. We began that in 2008, but more intensely since 2014. The sinews of this have to be expanded in terms of the infrastructure. We have done great things with Indian infrastructure. The 150 airports that we constructed, 15 metro stations for each of these cities in India, 37 kilometers of roads a day, and the 99.9% electrification of the tracks, railway tracks. We need to expand this further into the neighborhood in order to improve the connectivity projects. Third, of course, is the strategic autonomy and multi-alignment, as Ambassador Veena Sikri mentioned, and stability. That is very crucial for expanding our market. So the single focus of foreign policy has to be economic growth, economic growth, economic growth.
Okay, Ambassador, to wrap up the conversation, how would you look at the year 2026 in context of India's foreign policy? Professor has highlighted some of the domestic and the immediate neighborhood priorities, but in context of further deepening our partnerships with countries, in context of strengthening not just India's voice at multilateral institutions, but the whole of Global South, an endeavor that we've already been involved in, but most importantly in managing some complex relationships?
I think that this ability to manage complex relationships has been a very strong feature of Prime Minister Modi's leadership. Because of the multi-alignment, he is able to have the vision that, okay, there's a problem here, we are developing it there. So I think on the tariffs, for example, what a big blow it seemed to be, 50% tariffs and, this 25% completely discriminatory tariffs on India, because similar tariffs have not been placed on Russia or the EU, on China or the EU, etc. But India has been able to manage it remarkably, that our exports are growing, and that while exports to USA may have gone down, but exports to other markets are growing because we have faced the challenge. We said we have to be resilient, we have to build new supply chains, and we've done that. We have a combination of the new FTAs which have been mentioned. I think they're very valuable because that the bilateral FTA mechanism seems to suit India's the pattern of trading much more, rather than being part of these multilateral FTAs which leave a lot of grey areas and have been misused against the Indian market a lot. And I think that the way in which we have reversed any disadvantage is very valuable. And I think we have to be cognizant of the fact of two things: that India is now one of the world's largest consumer markets. Right. I think that's a strength of our economy, and that we have to leverage that. At the same time, I would say, as the manner in which we were able to meet the tariffs, even the restrictions on the H-1B visas. Now, the technological companies themselves are coming to India, and 50 to 60 billion dollars of investment has been promised in India. That if our IT experts cannot go, and AI experts, artificial intelligence experts cannot go to the USA for various restrictions, then these companies are saying we are going to come and invest in India. And they've already announced their plans. And we've seen how the Indian market has welcomed investment. This is the Prime Minister has been able to keep the pace of reforms up to the mark, in tune with the interest of of attracting more and more foreign investment. And that is why, I mean, the entire Apple iPhone production which goes to the American market is made in India now, So there's a huge level of confidence, because we have our demographics are very good at the moment. We have a working force which is very young, and at least for the next quarter century, 25, 30 years, it will remain like this. And so we have to, in this 25, 30 years, meet the objectives of Viksit Bharat in 2047, which is our Prime Minister's goal. And that is what we are moving toward. The Viksit Bharat goal brings in not only economic development, not only leveraging India's consumer market, but also building foreign policy relationships, building economic, trade, defense, and security relationships. Because being the biggest market, I want to say how, the resilience with which we came up, despite Operation Sindoor, despite the tariffs, despite the challenges in the neighborhood. And of course, as was just said by Professor Kulia, that even with Afghanistan, we were able to convert that into an opportunity because of the meeting of the minds between India and Afghanistan right now. And
That's right. I think it's some of these trends, Ambassador, that you highlighted, which power our policy in a manner which has brought India to a position today that we are able to shape global policies. Professor Tolia, I'll take one last question from you on now that we are in a position where we can change the rules of the game, at least build the narrative in favor of countries in the global south. How do you look at the new year? Giving us more strength to move more decisively towards issues of technology partnerships, or on issues of climate, on issues of sustainable development, something that matters to a lot of these developing economies today.
Yeah, we are also going to host one of the COP summits in the near future of the climate change. So I think our leadership, our vision, Prime Minister's mantra of a life, lifestyle for environment, all these will come to the fore. We have played a very strong hand in 2025 during the Belém COP30 summit. And we pushed very hard on behalf of the developing countries. So I think that those things are going to continue. And I just want to highlight one last thing, in the Indo-Pacific, with Japan and the US, we need to find, and with Australia, our Quad partners, we need to find, more concrete projects and deliver on the ground in this year. Because even though we are trying to normalize relations with China, the point is the Chinese juggernaut is just expanding voraciously, and they're going to eat up anything that appears on the table. So what we need to do really is to be able to also manage the China challenge. I think that will always remain a challenge for us. And in the coming year, we have to focus on how to do the counterbalancing. I mean, end of the day, there is no substitute to that, because otherwise they are, encroaching on our turf, and we need to beat that back, and we need to effectively also project power in the Indo-Pacific. And for that, I think we need the Quad summit to finally happen. The one that did not happen in 2025, we are expecting it in 2026, and that will be a major highlight of our diplomacy too.
Certainly. So there are many challenges, and managing relations with China will be a key priority in the coming year as well. Time allows us to take up only that much of the program today. Thank you once again, Professor Tolia, Professor Kondapalli, and Ambassador Sikri, for joining us, sharing your thoughts with us and our viewers about how eventful and assertive the year 2025 has been, but also about some of the immediate priorities that stand before India in terms of its foreign policy in the coming year. Thank you once again to you viewers for your time as well.
This course is a detailed introduction to system design for software developers and engineers. Gaurav Sen developed this course. He is an experienced software engineer, and he also has a popular YouTube channel. You'll learn about basic engineering design patterns that are used to build large-scale distributed systems. In the second part of the course, you will learn how to use the principles from the first part to design and code a live streaming video app.
Hello everyone, welcome to this system design course. This course is for beginners, in a sense that if you have never done system design before, or you have done very little system design, or you have just heard of it or read about it but not got an opportunity to actually do it, this course is right for you. At the end of this course, you'll be able to identify some basic engineering design patterns which are used to design large-scale distributed systems. Let me define each of these terms in detail. Large-scale distributed systems. As the first part of the term says, large-scale, meaning that something which is being used a lot or is very intensive in terms of compute or data or any computer engineering principle. For example, Google, let's say Google Maps. This is large scale because A, it has a lot of data. The whole world's map has to be stored inside it. B, it's being used by a lot of people. C, it's being updated very frequently. And D, it has a lot of performance expectations from it. You don't expect Google Maps to go down. You expect Google Maps to return results quickly. You expect it to be accurate, so on and so forth. So it's a very good product being used at a large scale. Distributed systems means that the server or the code that is actually executing this program is not in one place. It's distributed all around the world. So you might have one server in India, one server in the US, one in Japan for fault tolerance, so that if one of these servers crashes, the rest of the servers can take the load. It's also for performance. If the Indians want a Google Map result, they go and talk to the Indian server because that gives a quick result back. While if they go to the US server, they have to go across continents and then get a response, which is a slow result. Okay, so that's the point of a large-scale distributed system. Many of these companies which provide these solutions expect their engineers to know about system design, to know how to build these large-scale distributed systems. So to do this, their engineering team depends on design patterns, which we mentioned earlier. Design patterns are particular practices, principles, or processes which are used by engineers to build these systems. For example, you have a common problem of a celebrity posting on social media and that post being distributed to a lot of their followers. For example, if Brad Pitt posts something on YouTube and then posts it on LinkedIn, the problem is very similar. It's one piece of content which has to be made into an event and notified to millions of people potentially. And what you want to do is you want to notify them quickly, but you also don't want to put too much load on your service so that the rest of the requests which are coming into it continue being served. This is a common problem. So you extract out a common problem and you solve it using a common solution. This would be a design pattern. Right now, you don't know what design patterns exist, but one popular design pattern for this kind of a problem is a publisher-subscriber model, where Brad Pitt is a publisher and their event is subscribed to by millions of people. An intermediary decides the pace at which you send these notifications, which keeps the server load low and also makes sure that all the notifications actually reach all the subscribers. Now, seeing this, you can tell that as an engineer, you can take a lot of business requirements and convert them into technical solutions. And engineers use system design patterns to make reliable, scalable, and maintainable systems. This helps them convert business requirements into technical solutions. If this sounds exciting to you, watch the rest of the video and you won't be disappointed. Okay, let's start with an example. Let's say that you join a company which does broadcasting of videos to millions of people. This could be Hotstar, it could be YouTube, it could be Zoom also. So some sort of events which are being broadcast to millions of people, and you as an engineer have to devise the solution for this, come up with some technology which can handle this problem. So the first thing that we need to do as engineers is to define these requirements from the user's perspective. And often engineers don't do this. There are product managers in a company which write a product requirement document based on user feedback and data. So that's good to have. You have a well-documented, well-thought, business-backed document which the engineer can then read and decide on how they can make it happen. Amongst these, you pick up the most important features first. Taking the example of a live streaming system, users who tune into your system should be able to watch the stream live. Whether you see it at HD quality or you see it at 480p, that's probably a secondary issue, but being able to see the video is a primary issue. So for that, you have to make sure that your server doesn't go down, and you have to also make sure that your bandwidth requirements are sufficient. Second, you reduce these features to data definitions. So one of the features which might be defined is users should be able to like a video or should be able to like a comment. What you then do is you look at the concept of a like, the abstract concept of somebody liking something. What does that mean? It means that a particular user likes a particular comment. Okay, so it has a like ID, it has a user ID who's done this, it has a timestamp, when was this video liked or when was this comment liked. The comment itself is an abstract concept. It's probably going to be mapped into an object. It has an ID, it has a user who has typed this comment, it has a creation time, and maybe it also has a thread in which it was posted. So you're seeing that I'm taking features, or I'm taking these abstract concepts from the product requirement document and converting them into data definitions, which are useful for an engineer. These definitions can then be mapped into objects, which can then be mapped into the database. Once you've defined the data that you need to store, you need to define endpoints through which this data can be manipulated or queried. So I want to read comments. Give me an API, an HTTP API, FTP API for all we care. The network protocol at this point is not important, but some method by which I can send an electronic signal from one place to our server, and our server can respond to that signal with the data that they need. So our server is now encapsulating this data as per the user requirement and defining some endpoints, which are called APIs, so that external users can query and manipulate our data. We do this for every feature that we have, core features and also optional or good to have features. Usually a product requirement document does not define optional or good to have features. These are all core features which are required in the document. The good to have features will be probably picked up in the next document. So you don't need to think of which features are optional, but you do think of which features are most important as an engineer. The second thing is you also have certain engineering requirements when you're creating these designs or coming up with some code. You want to make sure that none of your services fail if there is an outage. So for example, if you have an outage in India and your comment service is in India, then you don't want the entire system to collapse. We talked about this a little earlier, that you have multiple servers spread across the world to avoid a single point of failure. You may also have multiple servers in India itself. So if one Indian server fails, another one picks up its responsibility. So here you might have some sort of data duplication, because of which the other server is quickly able to pick up the responsibility. Or you have some sort of partitioning that 50% of the users are going to this server, 50% of the users are going to another server. So just 50% of the users are affected. Another common and often missed out engineering requirement is extensibility, which means it's not just about the technical solution that you come up with, but also how easy it is to change that solution. For example, if you write code to send a message to millions of users, and you need to make a small tweak to that code, because now you don't want to just send it to 1 million users, you also want to check whether they have read those messages. So a read receipt. The problem with writing code which is highly coupled with the feature is that whenever there's a changing requirement, you have to put in a lot of effort to redesign, test, and actually deploy that code again. So you want your features, your engineering features, to be extensible. For this, you have to take out your engineering crystal ball and gaze deeply into it. Actually, what you do is, as an experienced engineer especially, you look back at your past projects, you look back at things that you have done, you look back at things that people have done, what the world is doing. And based on that combined knowledge, you build a system so that you can reasonably expect it to scale and extend as requirements change and as more and more users join you. Finally, this design needs to be tested. This is an important part of system design, which is not really thought through in interviews. But in the real world, when you have a system which is designed by, let's say, a senior engineer, that design has to be tested. So you run through a couple of requests with edge cases, with common cases, and you see whether these requests are having a sensible flow in the system at a high level. The other thing that you can do is you can use sophisticated tools to load test this design. You can have some sort of capacity estimation to actually see whether this design is feasible. But importantly, you have to test this design before you start getting into the code. Okay, let's recap with an example. Let's say we have a live streaming system. How would we go about designing this? Requirements would be streaming video, processing video, sending video to multiple customers, so that is broadcasting. Not failing is a requirement. Showing advertisements, allowing reactions, showing disclaimers or news flashes, having graceful degradation of video quality in case you have low bandwidth, allowing multiple device support, and so on. Amongst these, you'll see that the product requirements are mainly showing video to a lot of users. That's the major requirement. And also, of course, comments is a thing and being able to react is a thing. You may also consider product requirements to be showing a banner in case there's a problem. It is. But the core requirement, of course, is just showing a video. So I'll pick this feature first. This means that I have to capture video from a source, let's say, which is shooting at 8K. And I should be able to store it in some place in my server so that I can query it later. In a live streaming system, the later part, the query it later, is probably milliseconds. So I may not want to query that data at all. I may want to directly stream it from the video camera onto millions of people. Taking a step back, it looks impractical because if I'm shooting at 8K at very high quality, and this is raw footage, sending that much data to people on their mobile phones is unreasonable. So yes, I'll need to store it in some sort of a database or a file system, and then I should be able to stream that or query that out so that I can distribute it to all of my customers. But I don't want my customers to know exactly how I'm doing this, or I don't want them to know about there's a change in implementation tomorrow. I want this to be a black box so that they can pay me and relax. They just hit an API and their problem is solved. Of course, I might give them clients which are downloadable on the App Store, which take care of all of this API and querying also, so that as end users, they can just enjoy watching an event instead of thinking about how the technical part of this is actually happening. These APIs have well-defined signatures. You can tell that if I want this video ID in a particular format, then I have to query a particular API called getVideo, which is going to be returning me objects of type frames, and those frames are also well-defined. So if you have ever written a program, you know that these API signatures are very similar to method signatures. The only difference being that these APIs might be queried not through a programming language, but through a network protocol like gRPC, HTTP, FTP, any kind of protocol which defines exactly how an electronic message is going to be taken from one place and sent to another. And also how the response is going to come back and how the behavior of this interaction is going to be. That is defined by the protocol. So this is great. We have a system which is storing some data, which is valuable to us because we want to watch this event live. And this data is going to be queried using APIs. Also, these APIs are going to be tested beforehand so that the clients who are using this, who are paying for this service, are not disappointed when they actually query it. As engineers, we have to think of various failure scenarios. What if the database which is storing your videos crashes? What if a particular firewall on the internet starts blocking all of your requests? What if one of the services that you have written in your entire system, one program, one piece of code, starts misbehaving because you have introduced a bug in it, or there is somebody who has maliciously entered the system and changed the code in that system? We'll have to use some design principles that we talked about earlier. This challenge may also be a feature request. Like if you want the musician who's playing in this live event to be able to talk to their audience, do a back and forth with some audience members who they select either randomly or based on their activity. So you have to display those users to this musician live and be able to broadcast to parties to millions of people out there. So taking these requirements, let's try to design a live streaming application. So there's two ways to approach this. One is from customers or our clients to our server, which is out there in different parts of the world, and then to our database, which may be, again, in different parts of the world. That's one way to think. And the other way to think is from our database to our server. So what kind of data do I need to store to enable my server? And what kind of APIs do I need to expose to enable my customers to be able to use my product? Okay. Both of these approaches are fine. They require different ways of thinking though. When it comes to a data-based approach, you will need to consider what kind of data do you need to store. And often you'll be thinking of these pieces of data as tables. So you need to store a video with an ID. The video has a name, it has a size, and it has some data. That's one way to think. I prefer the other approach where customers define their problems, which are then fulfilled using APIs on the server, which are then fulfilled by storing some sort of data in the server, in the database. And that data is then mapped onto tables, like so. And so for this system, this is the approach that we'll be using. Okay, in our case, customers are live streaming customers. So they may be streaming from their cell phones or laptops or the TV. And we can't assume which device is being used more often. In certain countries, you'll have certain devices being used more. There could also be a tablet, of course, from which they're streaming this video. But you see that there are multiple devices which need to be catered to. This is a front-end UI design problem. System design is more to do with the distributed systems back-end part of things. There is some system design involved when it comes to API interactions and how to store or cache data on the front end. But that is not what we are focusing on here. We are focusing on the back-end part of the system. Okay, so these clients need to be able to query our server in real time. So what does our server need to have? Its APIs are going to be something like get video, and you pass in the video ID, and you pass in your device type. So I send you the resolution based on your device type, and you might have a particular offset that, I've already seen the first 10 minutes of the video, show me everything after the 10th minute. If I have a video API like this, I also need to return something. So the return type could be some frames, some video frames. Let's say each of these frames is 10 seconds long. So a single frame is what I send back, such that it is of this video for this device and after 10 minutes. So 10 minutes to 10 minutes and 10 seconds, that frame is picked up and sent to the client. If you know about API design, you see that this API is not well named. Get video means you get an entire video, but you're returning a frame. So maybe we can rename this to get video frame. Another thing is if you're using a REST protocol, get is going to be defined in the request itself. So GET over here is going to say that get me video is enough to say that you want a video. In our case, like we said, it's a frame. So maybe get frame or get video frame is what we are looking at. You'll notice that Vimeo also has a similar API when it comes to getting the next 10 seconds. YouTube also has an API which tells you from which point to which point do you want to see the video. So I'll give you all those frames. Great, so we have this. What else? You should be able to comment on a video, okay? So what you should be able to do is you should be able to post a comment. Again, I'm using a well-known concept in REST. Post means you want to put something in the server. You want to manipulate some data, you want to add some data to the server. So if I say post a comment with an ID, here I don't care about which device it is coming from because the comment is just data which has to be persisted in the server. Based on that, I'm not going to be changing my response or changing the behavior in which I'm posting the comment. So I don't need that. I don't need an offset, but I do need the comment data. I need the author of the comment. I need the post on which this comment was made. So maybe the video on which this comment was made. So the video ID. And similarly, for each requirement, we can expose APIs, which will allow us to query and manipulate the data as we want. So that roughly defines our server-side capabilities. Okay, we haven't spoken about anything in detail. We haven't talked about the network protocols also that we are going to use, but roughly this is what it is. Okay, now let's go for the next part, which is the database side of things. what kind of data do we need to store to satisfy these APIs? Returning frames is something we want to do. Storing comments is something we want to do, and also probably get those comments. So, and to get video frames, we also probably need to put video frames. What kind of database should we use? Comments are rather simple. You can store this in an SQL database such that an SQL table having an ID over here, the data of the comment, so text, being stored as a column, the author, which is a foreign key to a user table, right? So in a user table, you have an ID, and this author is going to be mapped to an ID over here. Along with that, we have a video ID. So there's a video table also, which has an ID and some data. The video IDs are going to be mapped in this way. Okay, an example of this would be video ID 10 is over here. This is a cricket match. Video ID 11 would be a musical event. Okay, and this is a comment table. So for this cricket match, a comment was made in which they said, hey, and the author was author number 1. Author number 1 happens to be Gaurav. That's their username. So if you have to display all comments in the front end for a particular video, what you want to do is you want to get all of the comments in this table for that video 10. Then you want to get the data for that user because you want to display the username who has made that comment. And you also want to get some video data because you have to display that on top of the page where the comment was made. So in this way, we are able to satisfy our requirement of posting comments, posting video. Now, overall, this system is complete. We have a system which can answer queries. Okay, this is good enough to start with. This diagram is not incomplete. It's very, very rough or high level. There's nothing here which is concrete. Nothing which is, let's say, useful when it comes to implementation. At this point in time, we have a rough idea of how we are going to be talking to each other, not what we are going to use to make this happen. So let's get into those implementation details. Firstly, on the client side, is there something we need to do? Yes. Different APIs require different behaviors. Posting a comment means that I'm posting this once and I'll be querying that comment maybe soon, but it's not like I need something to keep happening. I don't need continuous updates on the comment. Those notifications can be given periodically to me. Or maybe I don't need those notifications at all. After a few months, I just don't need notifications on that comment. So you see over here, you have non-real-time behavior. What about a video frame? When I ask for a video frame, I usually need to ask for the next video frame immediately after that. So I'm watching a live video. I ask for a video frame. I'm sorted for the next 10 seconds. In 5 seconds, I'll be asking the next video frame. So that behavior is different. It's a more continuous behavior. Okay, so maybe we need to use different network protocols to make this happen. What would I use for a comment? I would use the most common network protocol when it comes to distributed systems, which is HTTP. HTTP gives us the benefit that you have a stateless server. You don't need to store any information when you're handling a request. A stateless server is basically, I have no idea where you're from or what you want. Define everything in the request. Okay. Gaurav Sen wants the next 10 seconds of video. What do you mean by the next 10 seconds? Who is Gaurav Sen? Okay. So what should be there in the request is, here's Gaurav Sen. This is his user ID. You can actually go and look it up in your database. It's not the next 10 seconds that he wants. He wants the video from minute number 10 to 10 minutes, 10 seconds. Okay. That video length is also well defined. There is no concept of the next pointer here. And the video ID is mentioned. It's not like Gaurav wants the next 10 seconds of the video he was watching. No, I have no idea what video he was watching. You define which video needs to be pulled up here. You might think that this is an obvious point. Like, what's so special about defining everything in the client itself? It looks a little tedious and stupid, but doing it is fine. Doesn't everyone do it? Not necessarily. When you ask for the next 10 seconds of video, for example, Very often, as a client, you don't know what the next 10 seconds should be. Take an example. Give me the video at 10 minutes. Then 10 seconds from 10 minutes. Okay, that's one chunk. Let's say you make that request and the server is taking time to give a response. Now you come back and you say, give me the same video because you didn't receive it in time. The server is going to look at that request and serve you the same response again. The other approach to this would be the client making a request, give me the next 10 seconds, where next is known to the server. Okay, so here the definition is not 10 minutes to 10 minutes and 10 seconds. The definition here is the next 10 seconds. The server is now going to take this request, look at the user's current pointer, and then decide which 10 seconds to pull out. So in the first case, it will take 10 minutes to 10 minutes, 10 seconds. In the second case, it's going to make a decision to send you the video from 10 minutes, 10 seconds to 10 minutes, 20 seconds. What's the benefit? The client didn't need to know which part of the video it wants to watch. It lets the server handle it. It makes the overall network more efficient because the client is not making duplicate requests. And it makes the client code a little more simple. You don't need to define everything every single time. You let the server figure it out with context. That's the difference between a stateful and a stateless protocol. HTTP is stateless. Its benefit is that the server is kept simple. If the server crashes, there is no context or memory that is lost in the server. I mean, if you forget where the client currently was pointing to, then this is a serious problem, right? You can go and store it in your database instead and make a server stateless. Therefore, the protocol that you're going to use, HTTP, can be stateless. The best part about this is you can add new servers without any issue. You have no state being stored in server. So whenever a new server pops up, a new request comes with total context in the request itself, which you use to query your data. Right. What about video frames? You want to query video frames. You want to get the next one. What kind of a protocol will be nice? You can use HTTP here also, but a much better protocol would be something which is designed for video transmission. Because in video, you have to consider some other parts. What happens if I have a mobile device which does not have much resolution? What happens if I have poor bandwidth? What kind of video am I transferring? If it's a live streaming thing, then the current video is the most important video. What happened previously does not matter anymore. If I miss that packet, if that packet was dropped in the network, let it go. If it's a live streaming lecture where there needs to be full context to understand the next part of this lecture, then you probably want to send it properly. You want to send it over a reliable network and over a reliable protocol. Okay, so if you want a reliable protocol, a TCP-backed protocol is a good idea. If you want a real-time, efficient protocol, then a UDP-backed protocol is a good idea. So over here, I'm going to use a protocol like WebRTC. Here, WebRTC is a peer-to-peer protocol, so you actually are able to send video from the server to the client. Certain protocols have a client-to-server expectation. So the client is the only person who can send data, who can make a request to the server. The server cannot send data by itself to the client. Okay, so what I'm doing again here is using a peer-to-peer protocol for the video, but for comments, it's always going to be client-to-server. So you see that network protocols are also important when it comes to designing systems. Okay, finally, on the server side, what are some considerations we have to take? Similar to the server side, we have to think about how are we going to talk to the server. But most database solutions, let's say MySQL or Postgres, define exactly how you're going to be talking to the databases. So this is a TCP-backed protocol usually, but the protocol is defined well. So we don't need to think of that when it comes to talking to servers. Elasticsearch, for example, has a HTTP-based protocol. Cassandra, Amazon DB, Amazon DynamoDB, MySQL, Postgres, all of them, the protocols are well defined. The problem then becomes which database solution should we use? Because there's a ton of solutions out there and they have trade-offs. We could store data in the MySQL database also, but it's going to be expensive and it could be potentially very slow also. So what is this video data? It's effectively a file. So storing it in a file system is not a bad idea, right? And you don't want to build a file system yourself. So you want to use a well-known file system solution for this, maybe HDFS. That's one solution. You could also use a video hosting solution like Vimeo. Yeah, it's off the shelf. You can just use it. You can use Vimeo, by the way, to host events also. So it's best to mention this in the system design requirement. Like maybe an enterprise solution from Vimeo will take care of the entire thing. But if you can't do that, if you can't have a live streaming requirement and you don't want to lose your job, maybe because that will go over to Vimeo, then you can use a file system like HDFS or S3, Amazon S3. The benefit of S3 or HDFS is that it is cheap, it's easy to query, and you can store very large files inside it. Okay, in a database, yes, it's not cheap, but it is easy to query, and you can store very large files inside. The capabilities that a database gives you in terms of updating data or querying data may or may not be very relevant to you when you have a static file, which is a video file. Okay, you're primarily looking at low cost when it comes to storing video solutions. What about the user or the comment table? These two tables can have SQL solutions backing them. Let's say MySQL or Postgres. You may say that a comment is a complex data structure. Every time a requirement changes, the comment table also needs to change. Maybe you want to persist a lot of data in the comment table per entry. You want to persist all the replies of the comment also in the same entry. So a MySQL database or a SQL database is not what you're looking for. You're looking for a NoSQL database, which is not ideal when it comes to transactions or relational joins. But you don't have that requirement. You're looking for scale when it comes to comments. You just want to persist that data in a key value fashion. So that's NoSQL. Great. This is a very rough idea of how we are going to be designing, which is satisfying the requirements of the system, and also defining the protocols or the solutions that we'll be using to make it possible. For example, we talked about WebRTC, HTTP when it comes to network protocols. And when it comes to database solutions, we talked about MySQL and a file system. A design can go in more and more depth based on how important that requirement is. So doing a recap, we see that we have a system, a very rough blueprint even now, which talks about how our customers are going to be accessing our APIs and how those APIs are going to be accessing the data in our database. The data in our database may be being filled by customers, like in Facebook, usually the customers are the people who are filling the data, or it may be filled by an external service. In a live streaming system, it's probably going to be a really high definition camera, which is going to be recording the video live and persisting to a database. Okay, the network protocol that you probably want to look at is RTMP, real-time media protocol, which is a guaranteed protocol. You don't lose any data when you're shooting video using this. And the idea is WebRTC, you might lose some data. That's okay. It's the end user watching a live stream. They want data quick and real. But at the source of everything, you don't want to lose any data because everybody else will lose the data if you lose it at the source. So a highly reliable network can be set up over here, high bandwidth, expensive network, because that video camera is really going to need a high bandwidth, expensive network to persist that amount of data into your database. And then this data can be sent. You're seeing that I've skipped a lot of requirements. You see that I can't take this high quality data and just send it, broadcast it to everybody on the planet. What I'll need to do is transform this data. Okay. So now what we are doing is we have looked at a high level what the solutions are going to be. And now really getting into the nitty-gritties of designing the system. So the first part of this is how do we take this raw footage, this data, over the highly reliable network, which comes to our database, our file system, and convert it into data that we have to serve our customers. 480p, 720p, so on and so forth. You can't serve 8K definition. So how do you do that? There needs to be some sort of a transformation service over here, which is going to be taking this live stream and converting it into different resolutions. So 1080p, which is full HD. You have 720p, which is HD, 480p, which is decent for quite a few mobiles. And I don't know if this is something you want to do, but if the live part of your stream is really important, then 144p is also okay. Because as long as people are getting information and they're able to see roughly what's going on, they're going to be happy. Sometimes these resolutions are defined well in the product requirement document itself, the PRD, because after speaking to customers and getting their real feedback, you know which resolutions are acceptable or tolerable for the customer. There might be some customers who ask for premium 4K transfer also. Okay, so that's fine. I mean, you're watching it on TV, then you probably want to watch it at 4K. Okay. This raw video needs to be converted to these resolutions. How do you do that? So the first thing you'll do is you'll break this video into segments. This entire raw video is going to be broken into segments of 10 seconds. So you collect video for 10 seconds, you chop it off, you break that into one segment, and then you give it for processing at point number 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's say you have these 0 to 4, which is 5 programs, which take the raw video and convert it to different resolutions. So if you pass in 144p, then a particular program picks it up. If you pass in 480p, then another program picks it up. And maybe you have the same program which is running in 5 concurrent pieces, in 5 threads. Based on the resolution that you pass, it converts the video, the 10-second video footage, into that resolution. Similarly, you can think of different formats. So if you have a device which is an Android device, it probably has to see the video in a different format. Okay, it can't read all sorts of video. It has some formats which are well defined inside it, in the device. So it can read that format. Similarly, Apple devices might have a different format. So these formats define how you're going to read this piece of data, this video data, which is going to be sent over you through the network. Common video format is H.264. Apart from H.264, you might have your own proprietary formats. Let's say you have a format which is more efficient than H.264, or for your particular type of event, a music event, you research and you find that there's a way to store video more efficiently. So this is more of a very large scale problem. Like Netflix has its own formats, but if you're a small company, yeah, H.264 is very good. Okay, so different resolutions, different formats. We need to take our raw video footage and convert this into a combination of a resolution and format. So over here, we use a design pattern of map reduce. I won't go into too much detail of this design pattern, but the basic idea is you can take one video, split it into pieces, which is 10 seconds long, and send it to different servers to get different outputs. Okay, you might have something else also in the process. Apart from just transforming the type of video, maybe you want to compress it here in the next step. That can be in step 2. The servers being used here might be S3, S2, and S1. So you see S1 is being used here and here. S3 is being used here and here. So there is no guaranteed execution server that you have for one part of the process. Any server which is free will pick up a task and execute it, whether it's compression or transformation. Okay, and finally you get 3 different outputs, which you can store in your database. So this would be the map reduce pattern. It's a very high level overview of this. It's almost a caricature of the map reduce pattern because there's no reduce in this process over here. But have a look at this design pattern. It is useful when it comes to taking a single piece of data or a data lake and converting it into the data streams that you need. Next, how is this data actually going to go to the users who are looking to view it? So this data has to go over here to the server, right? Which is exposing these APIs of get, put, post. When you query this data using a protocol, you should be able to get it. We spoke about WebRTC earlier, which is a peer-to-peer protocol, and it's really good for video conferences because multiple people are streaming video together. However, in this case, it's a broadcast, not a conference. So we can take a step back and say, instead of WebRTC, we are going to use a protocol which is more suitable for streaming. There's there's a couple of protocols here also. The most popular one would be MPEG-. MPEG is a popular protocol. Dash here stands for Dynamic Adaptive Streaming over HTTP, which means that depending on your bandwidth, depending on the network that you're on, you're going to be able to see high quality video or low quality video. For example, you're going in a car, you're watching the video at 1080p, you enter a tunnel, your network is really, really poor, so you start watching it at 144p. As a client, you don't want to handle it, you want the network protocol to handle it. It's defined in MPEG-. Another very similar protocol is HLS. This is useful for iOS or Mac devices. Okay, and finally, what kind of data do you want to store on the server? Do you want to store any data at all? Do you want to make it totally stateless? Yes, statelessness is useful when it comes to request serving and keeping context for every user. But for some things, you can keep some state. Like when it comes to video, you can cache the last 10 minutes of video on your server. So anybody asking for video in the last, that video which is inside the last 10 minutes is going to get it from the cache instead of you making a full network call to the database all the way over here. You instead serve it from server itself. So you avoid this network call, saving time and bandwidth both. So these are the high-level considerations that you have when it comes to a system design. Like we said, this is a large-scale distributed system. Our assumption is that you have a lot of users, because of which this much planning and this kind of a design makes sense cost-wise and engineering effort-wise. We mentioned that there needs to be fault tolerance here, there needs to be performance here. So you can use things like CDN solutions. So you can use content delivery networks to persist some static data and have the clients actually pull the static data from here. Web pages are a good idea. You can also have some video data posted on the CDNs. In which case, authentication becomes a bit of a challenge because you don't want everyone to be able to see this data. And does the CDN do the authentication for you? Do you write some code and then host it on the CDN, which does the authentication? These are the challenges that you have, especially when you're designing a large-scale distributed system where performance is key. Okay, so this is at a high level, the things we need to consider when we are designing any sort of a system where the requirements are defined maybe in a product requirement document. Maybe it's a startup, so it's at a very nascent stage. There is no requirement document. You're directly talking to the customers and coming up with a technological solution which is going to satisfy the requirements. The important things to notice are that you define the requirements as abstract concepts, like objects. These objects then need to be able to be manipulated and queried using APIs on your server. The data representations need to be stored in databases. Once this high-level blueprint is done, we start thinking about what exactly do we need to make this system possible. So what protocols are we going to use? What kind of database solutions can we use? In some cases, you also think of what kind of intermediate design pattern solutions you can use. Like you have load balancers, you have message queues. These are all design patterns, and these have been converted into tools by various companies. Redis, for example, provides caches, load balancers, and many other things are also provided by cloud solution providers, AWS. You want to use these already well-built, well-tested solutions instead of rebuilding it yourself, unless the trade-off in terms of cost and performance is significant and it's worth it. Finally, once you have decided on the tools, you think about the interactions of these tools and the interactions of these services to meet your requirements. So we thought about how are we going to take a video and show it to the user. Oh, well, we have to transform that video. We have to convert it into different formats. Otherwise, it won't be visible in different operating systems. We then thought about how we are going to stream this video to the server. We then thought about how we are going to stream this video to the client device. And finally, we kind of touched upon actually streaming the video through a CDN solution instead of from your server. Because maybe your server is in the US, and even if it is close to the person who's streaming, you don't want your server to handle all of that load for some static content. You want to be giving that load away to well-known solutions like content delivery networks, which can be tied up with their ISPs. You can have a look at how Netflix does it here. Another part of system design is low-level design. This is in contrast with what we just saw, which is high-level design, where we took different components of the entire system and thought about how those components are going to interact with each other using network calls, using APIs, and then you're going to be sending data from one place to another. But largely, if you look at these systems, they own the business data related to that service. Now, what we are going to do is take certain functions of these services and try to code it out, which means we are going to go into much more depth. But because of that, we are probably going to lose some breadth. Okay, when you look at the high-level design of a system, you're looking at everything from how the users will be interacting with your gateway. The gateway is going to be actually sending these requests to your internal services. The internal services are looking at databases. You can't code all of this out. Even in at work, you can't just have this all in one document, one page. So you take small chunks of the system and you try to elaborate on each chunk. That would be the low-level design. The core functionality of live streaming is to be able to view a video as a customer, as a person who's paid. Maybe it's a subscription, maybe it's a one-time purchase. But what we are looking at here is how does a user fetch video, view video, and fetch more of the video and continue doing so till the video ends, right? We are not looking at onboarding the video, onboarding a movie, or how the live stream is going to be moved from the source camera to our system. We are looking on the other side, the user side, of how it's going to be consumed by the users. To do this, we again have two approaches. One is to think of the code in the start. So if you are an object-oriented programming language person, you might think of what kind of objects do I need to have in my system? How are these objects going to interact with each other? Is there any kind of inheritance I have to take into consideration? But as earlier, this is a little difficult to think of unless the requirements are extremely well specified or they are so generic that you have to look at the data that you're storing first before you think of the functionalities. I would suggest you think of the user. So even over here, we think about what are the actions that a user can perform. So what I'll be doing is on my phone or on my desktop, I'll be scrolling to a particular place to watch the video. Okay, so I'll be scrubbing the video up to a particular point. That can happen. I can also click on play from the start. So start the video at the beginning at timestamp 0. Both of these are very close to each other. So effectively, the action is play video at timestamp X. Another functionality that I need is to pause the video. Okay, in which case, what do? Do you continue fetching more segments from the backend, or do you stop fetching segments? So the behavior is dependent on the user experience that you want to give. If you don't want to clog up their mobile with the entire video while they have just kept it in the background, then you have to be smart about it. Probably the next 20 or 30 seconds or 1 or 2 minutes can be buffered into your device. So that behavior also has to be coded inside. Despite pausing, we go for the next 2 minutes of video from the place that you have seeked right now. Another important requirement is that depending on your device, the video quality which is going to be fetched is going to be either HD, let's say you're viewing it on a desktop, or 480p, let's say for low resolution devices. And one final feature is up to what point have you played a video, which means if you had a 1 hour long video, let's say there's a cricket match between India and Pakistan, and it's 1 hour long, and you have seen up to the 20th minute. If you log out and come back and want to watch the same video, we should start at the 20th minute. We should store that somewhere so that you have a good user experience. You might want to cache the video like we were doing earlier. The next 2 minutes, you want to keep that buffered so that you start playing immediately when the user has come. Or you may not want to do that. You might want to do that just for some videos which have been recently watched. The older videos then can be kicked out of the cache. You see that what I'm considering here are memory optimizations, user behavior, and API calling. This is largely what low-level design will mean when it comes to interacting with services. Depending on your level of seniority and depending on the use case, you might have issues of concurrency, latency, and throughput also come in here. An example use case will be the workflow that we had for chunking and transforming videos. I'll leave that as an exercise to you. But there are cases where you want to increase your throughput to the maximum. So you don't really care that much about latency, how quickly do you get those videos through the pipeline? That's not your concern. You want to make sure that your pipeline is continuously functioning, right? Another case is where the moment a video comes in, the new video, you want to respond to it as quickly as possible with the assumption that that video is really important. So there's going to be some sort of context switching over there. Okay, I'll leave that as an exercise to you. I won't give you too many details, but it's interesting to think about how these different low-level design requirements affect the code that we write. Similar to what we did earlier, we are going to take a structured approach to solving this problem. The first tool that we like to use is called a use case diagram. As the name suggests, we think about what are the use cases that we need to fulfill for every user. For example, you can see 3 actors in this system. An actor is a person who can do actions. So an admin can do actions in our system. They can add videos, maybe. A videographer is a person who can upload videos. So it may not be necessary that every video which has been uploaded will be added to the system. Before it gets added, it has to have some metadata added to it. What's the description? What are the timestamps? What kind of video is this? How do you tag it? So that might be taken care of by an admin. The videographer shoots the video, uploads it, specifies the quality and everything else. So that's a separate actor. And the customer, the person who consumes the video. We said that this is the most important person for us. So this is the only actor that we are going to be thinking about. Let's get rid of these 2 actors. We mentioned that there are 4 things that we want the customer to be able to do. Let's note them down. The first thing is to be able to play a video from a timestamp. Okay. Then comes another requirement, which is this is them coming back to the old video that they watched partially, and they want to start watching again from the left of timestamp. We also want to view at the maximum quality allowed by network and device. So if you're on a low quality network, that's okay. Low quality video is also fine. But if I'm on my home Wi-Fi, I want to see the best quality video that I possibly can. I've paid for this subscription. There's things which are also happening in the background. Of course, like we said, concurrency, fault tolerance, throughput. These are things which the end user does not need to think about. You might say latency is something that affects the user. It kind of does, but we are not looking into it. We are assuming that all of our requests have to be answered within 10 seconds, quickly enough. And this brings us to our next point. We need to continuously buffer our video, right? So have non-stop play when watching videos. This is assuming, of course, that their bandwidth is not messed up. If your bandwidth is messed up, you can't buffer. So that's not a problem. But if my bandwidth is fine, then for the next 2 minutes, I should be able to watch the video. Okay, and this is the customer. If we can fulfill these requirements, they're going to be a happy customer, which matters a lot as an engineer. Okay, these would be called use cases. Right? You can have many use cases. Some of them are core use cases, some of them are not. When it comes to system design, the expectation is that if there is a PRD that has been given to you, a product requirement document, usually it's just on one use case, right? You add a feature and each feature is important. So we'll take all of these and mark them as reasonably important. The next step is to convert these requirements into classes and objects. This is where things usually go wrong. When you look at the use case diagram, right, it looks like everything is to do with the customer. View at maximum quality allowed by network and device. But is the customer actually doing that? Is the customer saying that, please give me the best quality video? No, that is obvious. That part is obvious. So who's going to handle that? If the customer is not going to handle that part of the system, then the system has to handle that part. Okay, so there needs to be another actor in this system, but it's not somebody who does actions like physically. They're going to be interacting with your system. So view at maximum quality offered by the network. Who's going to handle that? There needs to be some sort of a controller or the brains behind how much video should you send. So I'll just call this the rate limiter. Okay. Sometimes the entire service the entire functionality can be handled just by using a tool. So we offload the problem to a tool. Or in our case, what would be ideal is to use a network protocol which takes care of this. Depending on my device and depending on my network requirements, you take care of the bandwidth. An adaptive bitrate protocol is going to handle this. HTTP- will handle it. So we'll assume that this entire service, which was going to look at the user's requirements and then offer them video at particular bandwidths, can be taken care of by a simple protocol. So this rate limiter does not need to exist. Instead, whenever you're connecting to our system, it's going to happen over HTTP-. Right, that is a pretty big deal. One entire use case taken care of just because you know what tool to use. Now, in an interview scenario, you might be asked, how does HTTP- work exactly? How does it work internally? For that, you can either read some papers which help you learn the protocol internals. Database internals are also very similar. Operating system internals are also very similar. Or you can guess. In which case, you should probably specify that, hey, I'm just guessing over here, but I think what's going to happen in this adaptive bitrate would resemble exponential backoff in TCP. Now for the next bit. Play a video from a timestamp. This means that every video needs to actually store a corresponding timestamp for a particular user. Okay, that can be done. We need to have an object here. Our service, which is video server, a video consuming service, is going to be used by end users. Play a video from a timestamp. Okay, so this has to be taken care of by the video consuming service. So that will be play video for a user, and this is the video ID. Okay, so I'll just remove the play, put this, and I'll also mention the timestamp that is being passed here. You see that I'm still thinking in terms of APIs. The clearer your APIs are, the easier your low-level design will be. The more you think about how the users or each feature is going to be implemented using the services that you have, the easier your design will be. Okay. Go back to a video and watch from left of timestamp. This is quite straightforward. You have seek for this user and this video. What is the seek position? So let's say we call it get seek position, but like we said, if you're using a REST API, then you can mention in the method it's get. So that will send you back the seek position. It's best to mention the return type also, like I said. The clearer you make your API, the better it usually is. So video frame will be sent back here. And similarly, what will be sent back here is the timestamp. So what's going to happen is when you come back to a video which you have left off, you're going to first seek what is the position where you should go to. So that will give you a timestamp. And then you say, okay, play this video for this user from this timestamp. All right. Have non-stop play when watching videos. This is interesting. We need to get frames in future. So what do? Do we say play here or do we say get video frame for a particular user and a video with a given timestamp? Do you see that these two are very similar? Since what this API is also going to return you is a video frame. And you're going to stack these video frames together and buffer them into the video, into the phone. Yes, I see a very, very close linking between this API and this API. At this point, you ask yourself, what does the product need? Is play a different action from fetching the future content? And here I'll make a decision of yes, it is different. It's strange to think of because they are doing the exact same thing. What they're doing is the user is saying, play me this video from this timestamp. That's okay. And the other one is that the video player is saying, get me the video frame for this timestamp. Looks extremely similar, but The business use cases are very, very different. If the user says, get me a video from this timestamp, it means that they have probably seeked to that position, they liked what they saw there, or they found it exciting and they clicked on it. So it's very different behavior compared to, hey, get me the next 2 minutes of video in the background. Okay? That's one very important thing when you're designing any API. Think about who is using it, what is it being used for, right? And then think about the common functionalities. So these two APIs are very similar. And on the server side, what you would ideally like to do is just merge these two APIs. The client should figure out by itself that what video frame does it want to pick. So maybe you cut down on the APIs that you have to maintain by replacing the current API of play with what we have here. So maybe every time you play from a particular point, we should send an event to the backend service saying that this is an exciting part of the video. The user actually came to this timestamp, seeked here, and clicked on the video. Okay, you see that there is a seek API, which is primarily for when you have left off a video. So if you left off, came back, and started watching from there, maybe it's not super exciting. It's just the place that you're leaving off from. You want to continue from. But during the video, while watching it, if you came to a particular position and started viewing, that requires an event. That shows that this part of the video is sought after. So it feels like you're splitting hair here, but from the side of the business or from the side of analytics, they are very different use cases. From the side of engineering, it's the exact same behavior. Someone asks you for 10 seconds of video, you give them 10 seconds of video. But for analytics or for the business, this part should be converted into a trailer. This part is just for user experience. So it depends on you as an engineer. I personally would take this API and I would see who's making this request. So a flag would probably say that the user made this request or the device, the mobile, made the request for good buffering. And depending on that flag, I would then fire an event for showing interest in this part of the video. All right, so that is the use case diagram. We can now think about the class diagram. Let's draw the class diagram out. The first class that we need is a video. Two things that we need to store for every class are states and behaviors. States are data that an object needs to perform behaviors. For example, I am speaking right now, so I need a throat, I need a tongue, I probably need a brain to speak. And what I'm doing right now is teaching. So the behavior would be teaching, while the data that I need is my body parts to actually work in tandem. Similarly, you might have a video which has certain data that it needs. So that would be the bytes of the video, or let's say frames, because we have been using this term. That's in every video. You might have some metadata like who's the uploader of this video, how long is it, what kind of tag do you want to add, so on and so forth. What operations can you perform on the video? Well, you can get a frame, right? That's pretty much it. Okay, you can't add a frame after you've added a video. You can't do anything apart from just getting a frame from a particular point. So that's a simple class. You also have the class of user. You see that I'm now focusing on the class diagram. So user has a name, an email, more metadata around them, but nothing else really. The most important thing probably will be an ID. In your case, could be an email. Video also will have an ID. And for a user, you can probably get their ID. Okay, very simple class again, which brings us to the most exciting class, which is watched video. Okay, so a watched video is going to be an action by a user who's basically watching a video. So this needs a video ID. Which video have you watched? Who is watching it? That is the user ID. An ID of the action so that you can refer to it later up to what timestamp have they watched this video. So seek timestamp. And coming back to the use cases, we might want to buffer up to a particular point, but let's assume that the client handles that. The client knows how much video you have buffered already in the device. Going back to a particular place is possible because of the timestamp. The final class is video consuming service. This also requires a class to be explicitly shown here. So that is video consuming service. Let's first define the behaviors that this class has. So that is API 1 and API 2. And to do this, it just needs a set of watched videos. Which will tell it which user has seen what video. Okay, that takes care of our entire class. You see, this is a very simple class diagram. What is more challenging actually is the sequence diagram. Okay, how is a user going to watch a video? So this would be called a class diagram where we have defined what state and what behaviors are possible for each object in our system. Fine. These two diagrams of a class and use case are sufficient in most cases. However, in some places where the interaction is complex, like over here, you need another diagram which defines the sequence of actions. In this case, it's not very clear how the user is behaving. These are the actions that they can do. Okay. These are the things that you need to store and the behaviors you need to expose for the action to happen. That's also right. What is the sequence of actions? What happens first? What happens second? That's not clear. And for that, you need a sequence diagram. So let us try doing that. This is what you call a timeline. The y-axis basically is time, but in descending order. So you have three timelines here. One is that of a user. A user does certain actions. Things happen to a video. Okay, and the video consuming service actually uses a video's current seek time to get the next frame. So this might not just be a video, it could be a video service which is providing you an API to consume the next frame of the video. And we'll see how this happens. First, the user sends a message. What message is this? Right? Like we said earlier, this is going to contain user information and the video information. This is responded to by the video consuming service immediately because it knows up to what point has a user seeked a video. So that is, you return a timestamp. Now the user is going to make another interaction, which is play or get video frame, right? So get me the video frame as this user or this video at a timestamp. And the tool I'm using here is Lucid Chart. As you can see, if you use tools, it helps. Instead of reinventing the wheel or doing it in a haphazard way, this is much better. The video consuming service cannot get you the frame though. However, it's best that the user interacts with the video consuming service. So it could send a message to the video service and say, get me the video frame from a particular timestamp. Okay, the important thing to notice here is that the video service has no idea who the user is, whether they're authenticated or not to watch this video, and it just gives you a timestamp. Okay, I could have taken this request and sent it directly to the video service. Okay, and the video service could say, sure, I don't care about which user is trying to access this video. Just tell me the video and the timestamp, and I'll give you the response. But authentication would be a bit of a problem. So that's the reason why I'm assuming authentication is going to happen here for every frame that you ask. And then the video timestamp has been mentioned. I'm going to be sending back a response of a video frame. I could also send back multiple frames in the hope that you can use them later. But I'm assuming that a frame lasts for 10 seconds, and if you really feel like, you can send a request in between and get another frame. So it's a single frame, and this is then sent back to the user. Okay, that's the interaction for a while. The moment you get a frame, you want to repeat this action. And so the data keeps flowing. Very similar to how a TCP connection works, actually. Initially, you have some sort of a handshake, right? You get some initial information, set up the connection, and then what's happening is you're constantly pinging. One of the drawbacks that I can see here in my diagram is that the video consuming service is an intermediary. There's so much communication happening between the video service and the user. This is just wasting time. I don't know if that is worth it. If just authentication is worth complicating our flow this much. I mean, you can put some authentication here in the video service itself. So you'll save on 2 network calls, which is a lot. So yeah, maybe I should just take this, put this here, and take this, put this over here. Right? Don't go into the video consuming service. That's what we'll be doing in the code. So now we finally jump to coding. Remember to use the diagrams that we have made as a reference, because most of our thoughts and most of the interactions are documented well over there. It would be a waste not to use it. The whole purpose of making these diagrams is to take away the thinking effort required while coding. Coding is basically us typing out or writing the things which have been mentioned or thought through in these diagrams. Okay, that will speed up things and also help you avoid mistakes. So the first class that we talked about is a video class video. The state that we talked about is it has an ID, it has frames. So maybe a set of frames here, but then the frames are also ordered, so an array of frames makes sense. And then some metadata. So in our case, I'll just say metadata JSON. Of course, in the real world, you would actually have the creator of the video, the uploader of the video, and many other parameters, the length of the video, everything else. But we don't need that right now. So I'll just create a class. You see that an ID helps you create classes much better. These classes that I'm creating are just plain Java objects. You can use the same thought process for C++, for C#, and many other languages, any object-oriented programming language. If you're coding in Python or Scala, it might be slightly different, right? But the logic is very similar. Come to the point of defining things as objects and the interactions between them, and finally define the states and the behaviors of every object and then code them out. Okay, so this is largely language agnostic, this approach. You have a video which needs a frame. A frame is going to be a bunch of bytes, so that's okay. And maybe it has a timestamp. So that is int timestamp. You also have a class of user from the diagram. User has a string ID. It has a string name, string email. These are basically metadata. And we talked about some behaviors that these classes need. So return a frame when someone says get frame. And which frame should we return? We should return the frame which is being called for a particular timestamp. So you see our class diagram had missed that. Now we can go back and fix it. or we can fix it in code. I would suggest fixing it in both places, because if the documentation is up to speed, it helps. In timestamp, you can also have timestamp as an object for making sure that the integer is greater than 0 and all that, all the validations that you want. But I'm just keeping things simple. Pass in a timestamp here. We are going to be iterating over the frames. This can be improved, of course, but what you want to do is you want to go over the frames and return the timestamp and return the frame only if the timestamp of the frame is less than the timestamp you have asked for, less than equal to, and there also has to be some sort of an end timestamp. So we can assume that every frame is of 10 seconds, in which case the start time is this has to be less than equal to, and the end time mentioned over here plus 10 is greater than or equal to this timestamp, okay, or rather greater than, then this frame belongs to this. If you don't get the frame, then you just return null. You can also throw an exception here. So let's see. I would say throwing an exception makes sense, because the meaning of an exception is that I didn't know how to react to this. Null would mean that, oh, you get blank. So if a timestamp of 20 hours is sent for a video having just 1 hour, a blank frame is not exactly what you want. You want to say, oh, you're out of bounds. So index out of bounds exception being thrown here is going to be useful. Okay. Now, there's another small problem I see over here, which is the magic constant of plus 10. You don't really want to do this. It doesn't look good. Because tomorrow, if your frames get optimized and can store 30 seconds of video, then you have to go and change it in the code. So you might have this in a constant in the video itself. Let's say a class constant. So public static int frame time equal to 10. And then what you have is, if you need to make any change, then you make a change in a single place. But even that would not be suggestible, because this is something related to the frame. So let's take that, put it in the frame class, and then what you have is frame.frameTime. Has to be this. But that is also, that's fine. It's good. There's just one data point for the entire class. All of your frames have the same amount of frame time. It could be different. It could be that these frames, some frames are really high quality. There's a lot of movement over there. So it's not even 10 seconds long. It's just 2 seconds long. And some frames are, like this coding frame over here. You can store 10-15 seconds of video because there's not much happening over here. There's not any face moving or something. So I'll just take this and I'll leave it to the object, not the class, but the object. So it does not become a class property, which is going to be for every object. It is defined by each object. So end timestamp and then this becomes start timestamp. All right, so this is better. I don't need to mention start timestamp. I just say end timestamp has to be greater. Okay, this is much more flexible code. This is what will set you apart from just a coder. You're going to be an engineer then. Okay, so now we have a user. You can get their ID. So this is not really related to what we are doing, but that's okay. Int get ID and return the ID string. Okay, the next class is more interesting. There's watched video, which is a class. Here we have the ID of this action. We have the video ID. We also have the user who's actually watching this video, who's doing this action. And we have a seek timestamp. So that is seek time. Okay, we mentioned that there's going to be a method to get seek time. Important to notice that APIs having REST have the keyword get inside them. Often, like, you can mention that you're posting something or getting something, but the objects here can have a get of their own because you don't exactly know what's happening, right? It's not a HTTP API here. It's a Java object. So get seek time makes more sense here. So this defines everything except for the last couple of behaviors, which are actions by a user or actions by a system. So the video consuming service, show me the seek time. So this is going to be a public int seek time return for this watched video. So seek time had a user ID and a video ID. Let's assume that watched video is a database call. And once you have this watched video, what you want to do is you want to get the seek time and return that. Okay, so for this to work, we need to have a database. Which we are going to create as a dummy object. Okay, let's create that and return that. Okay, this is great. It gives you the seek time. And then finally, the other API that we looked for is class video service. So the final class is going to be using a file system, let's say, because videos are usually stored in a file system. And let's define that class, this class file system. Okay, now there's a public method similar to the previous service, which is going to be returning a frame, and that is get frame for a particular video with a video ID and a timestamp. Okay, and how's the interaction going to happen? We first need the video. So let's say our file system gets us the video with this video ID. Once you have the video, you need to return the frame corresponding to this timestamp. And that's it. That's pretty much it. You have something backing your services, some sort of database or file system. Once you have them persistent, you can always get to them and pull data from them. Once these systems are being backed by a database, then you can actually manipulate this data that you have by exposing APIs. And the best way to manipulate the data is to abstract them out into objects which have their own state and behavior. So the code is simplified and you can reuse a lot of the behaviors for different types of use cases. This would summarize the low-level design process. All right then, that's a reasonably well detailed introduction to system design. If you want to look at more videos on system design, there's a free section that I have on Interview Ready, which is all about the design patterns and the basics of system design, load balancing, rate limiting, sharding, and scaling. And if you want a more advanced version of system design, I have a paid section in that same course. I would suggest go ahead and check out the free resources first. If you really like it and you think that, it's time to level up, go for the paid section. All the best.